Good Friday afternoon and welcome to 580 Sports Talk, the final edition of the week. Thank you so much for stopping by on your Feel Good Friday afternoon. Brendan Dworzinski and Dan Lucero here with you for the next 3 hours. Plenty to get to on the show today. Potentially major news developing on the college realignment front. Yes, we talked about it a little bit the other day. Pac-12 is in kind of a bad spot. Big 12's got to be feeling pretty good. Well, The Athletic reported today that the Big 12 might be in the process of trying to poach a few schools from the Pac-12. This feels like for the first time in a long time, we have felt some legitimate movement on that front. So we'll get to that coming up here in just a little bit. A lot of college sports to get to on the show today, along with the realignment stuff. We'll preview K-State and KU this weekend. It'll be the Cats versus West Virginia in Morgantown. And the Jayhawks will take on the Texas Longhorns down in Austin. So we'll get to that. We'll preview the rest of the Big 12 weekend and look at the various outcomes for Big 12 tournament seeding. K-State could be anywhere from the 2 seed to the 4 seed, any of those options. So we'll get to what's most likely for them, how they will get there, the other matchups from around the conference this weekend, all over the course of the next 3 hours. We will also talk with Matt Derrick, our Herman's Meat and Smokehouse Chiefs insider, coming up in a little bit to get to all things Kansas City Chiefs as we approach the NFL draft. We are going to talk for about an hour and a half today about combine measurements, so I hope you
hand sizes.
Oh, yeah. Talk about hand sizes. We can legitimately talk about Nolan Smith, the edge rusher for Georgia, running a sub 4.40. This man is an outside linebacker, defensive end player, and he ran a 4.39 40-yard dash.
Yeah, I quoted Bomani Jones from ESPN yesterday. He tweeted, "Why is this man being drafted into the NFL and not in a Marvel movie?"
Yeah, he is like one of the Avengers. It's absurd. His testing numbers are going to be just insane. So I'm joking about doing a lot of combine coverage, but we will talk to Matt about the draft, about free agency, all of that coming up in just a little bit. Also, the tag deadline, the franchise tag deadline to apply it to players is Tuesday next week. That'll be before we talk to Matt again after today. So we'll see if it is indeed a done deal that it will go to Orlando Brown. That's coming up. We've got our weekly championship in What Is Wrong With You, our 580 Sports Talk headlines, a round of Change My Mind. All of it is coming up on this edition of 580 Sports Talk. We would love for you to be a part of the show on the Big O Tires text line. 785-272-9429 is the text line number. And you can also hit us up on YouTube. Sports on 580 WIBW is the channel. So head on over, go check it out. Subscribe if you have not already. It's the best way to find all of our live streams, post-game shows, and much more. Again, that's Sports on 580 WIBW on YouTube. The Big 12 and the Pac-12 have been in kind of a Cold War over the last few months. The Big 12 adds the new schools and has really kind of solidified itself. And I'm trying to remember which insider it was. This might have been Brett McMurphy who said this the other day during a podcast spot or a radio spot. But he said essentially the Big 12 is in a great spot because no one else wants any of their programs. Like the Big 10's not interested in anyone. The SEC is not interested in anyone else. So they're solid. Like they know what they are. They know what their membership is going to be. They have a long-term vision. They've got a TV deal for the near future.
A new forward-thinking commissioner.
Like Big 12 set. They're locked in, which is almost a backhanded compliment. Like, oh, yeah, you guys are so pathetic that you actually have some unity. That's good. But, hey, when we were not more than, not even 2 full years ago going through, well, the conference might be dead because OU and Texas are getting poached from it. To be in that spot now, that's pretty good. Meanwhile, over the last few months, ever since the start of July this past summer, the Pac-12 has now been the reeling conference. When USC and UCLA said, we're out, we're going to the Big Ten, the Pac-12 has been on tilt ever since that point. And you have wound up with this war of words from fans of Big 12 schools versus fans of Pac-12 schools, fans that want one conference to survive versus the other. You've got media members who very clearly have allegiances with one conference versus the other. I feel like the Pac-12 has more of those, but there are definitely some who have more Big 12 allegiances, Brett McMurphy being one of them. He's an Oklahoma State guy. So you've kind of had this back and forth for a while now but no real movement. You know, the Big 12 got its TV deal done for football and basketball. The Pac-12, we're still awaiting that. But until we actually know what kind of money they're looking at or what networks or streaming providers we're looking at for the Pac-12, hard to really know what their future looks like. Well, then today, Max Olson and Stuart Mandel at The Athletic put out a story, a report about the potential future of realignment for these two conferences. And here is really the abstract. If this was a scientific journal, here would be the abstract of it. Klivakov, that's George Klivakov, the commissioner of the Pac-12, is facing pressure to deliver a new media rights deal to his members by the end of the month. If the dollar figures or the details are underwhelming, March may be the moment when the Big 12 finally strikes. Sources briefed on the discussions say the conference has been in recent contact with the so-called four corner schools, Arizona, Arizona State, Colorado, and Utah, which has renewed optimism that convincing them to join the Big 12 is possible. So to sum that all up, if the Pac-12 doesn't get the money that those schools want, the Big 12 is going to come in and poach them. Now, to me, this says more really about the Pac-12 imploding than the Big 12 being some sort of idyllic outcome. Like, if you knew you were going to get the same payout the Big 12 is getting, because what is it for the Big 12? $37 million on their next deal?
Yeah, something like
37 and change per school per year to start. If the Pac-12 knew it could get money like that or even close to that, to be completely honest with you, I assume that Colorado, Utah, the Arizona schools would say, yeah, we're not leaving. We'll stick with that. That's fine. So I think this is more about the Pac-12 being a complete and utter disaster than it is about the Big 12 being the best possible option for anyone out there. But if the Pac-12 is going to have half as much money as they're distributing now because USC and UCLA are gone, well then, yeah, this obviously makes the Big 12 look like a much better situation. And this, to me, more than anything, is about leadership for these conferences. Look at the last two commissioners in both leagues. The previous one for the Big 12 was Bob Bowlesby. Bob Bowlesby was a white bread sandwich, two pieces of store brand white bread around another piece of white bread with a glass of lukewarm water. That's what Bob Bowlesby was as a commissioner. And yet, that was still miles better than Larry Scott in the Pac-12, who came in. His background was in tennis, in professional organized tennis. And he came in, moved their headquarters to San Francisco, racking up more costs for the conference. Because guess what? It's a lot more expensive to have buildings and facilities and headquarters in San Francisco than in, I don't know, Arizona or parts of Colorado or parts of Washington or any other state that the conference is aligned with. Or hell, put it in Nevada. There's plenty of open room in Nevada. You could invent any of those. Nope. Let's put it in San Francisco instead. He did a terrible job of marketing that conference, he and his cronies. The Pac-12 network that was developed under them is still a complete disaster. You can't even see on most of the West Coast and in many of the cities where Pac-12 teams align, and certainly not in the rest of the country unless you have a very specific group of cable providers. They damaged that brand to a monstrous degree that now it's something of a laughing stock, or a joke in basketball. I mean, it's barely a power conference in basketball. And in football, for the last 4 or 5 years, by week 6, all the national discussion is, yep, Pac-12 ate itself again. Guess they're out of the playoff hunt.
Yeah.
Year after year after year. Now look at the current commissioners. Brett Yormark has been on the job since August 1st, has been extremely active in trying to add to the conference, and we'll get to more about a basketball move here in a little bit. But he's been extremely active with that. They've developed new business partnerships. They're trying to make the Big 12 a bigger deal. And while that is going to end up maybe hurting us locally, because the Big 12 tournament's leaving Kansas City after the next 2 years. Like, it ain't coming back. But they're trying to get more business partnerships. They're trying to bring in, entertainment to make it feel like it's more than just football and basketball games. It's an event to go see Big 12 things. He's very forward-thinking. He's got a great entertainment business mind. Sports are about more than that, but you understand where I'm coming from. George Klivakov came in. He had the background with it. I think it was MGM in Vegas. He had a Vegas background. Yeah. Very much an entertainment background. There's been a lot of talking, right? There's been a lot of talk about how we're going to do this and we're going to do this and our guys kicking ass, all that. What have they accomplished? What has that league accomplished except for its two biggest brands announcing that they're leaving in the last 2 years? Nothing. Not one good thing. And the grand scheme of college athletics. So to me, this is more about leadership than anything. The Pac-12 could have solved this problem a decade ago. Seriously. Instead, they're now at a point where they're going to lose 4 brands in potentially. I guess it's not a guarantee, but it seems to be trending in that direction. And at that point, you're left with what? Cal, alumni don't care about sports. Stanford, alumni don't care about sports. Oregon and Washington, your two biggest remaining brands who actively are trying to leave at all costs. And then Washington State and Oregon State, longtime power conference teams that are going to be left as men without a country. That's all that's left.
If the current Pac-12 situation feels familiar, it should to Big 12 fans, because right now where the 10 Pac-12 remaining schools are is very similar to where the Big 12 schools were when it came time for them to negotiate a new deal, and Oklahoma and Texas were the big players.
Mm-hmm.
And Oklahoma and Texas had demands and had interests and had the stroke among the league's members to be able to say, hey, give us what we want, or we walk, we leave.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, eventually, they got everything they wanted and they left anyway, right? Texas and Oklahoma got everything they wanted, all the concessions they could have possibly gotten reasonably from the Big 12 conference. Texas got to have their own network, and they left anyway. What happened? They left anyway.
Mm-hmm.
That's the same spot the Pac-12 is in right now. Oregon and Washington know they drive the bus. They are the big athletic programs that are left over once USC and UCLA leave the league. So they're the ones in the driver's seat. They're the ones getting to make the demands. And I think everybody in the Pac-12 knows damn well that we can kowtow to Oregon and Washington. We can give them a bigger piece of the pie. We can cave in to what it is that they want to keep the league together in the short term. But if they get an offer to join the Big Ten, they are gone. And then what happens to us?
You're left in the dust. You've got nothing.
So I don't blame the Four Corner schools for being proactive here and starting to look elsewhere and look towards a more stable situation, because this has always been the most interesting thing. There have been 2 athletic directors of the remaining 10 in the Pac-12 that have been willing to speak on the record, put their name on quotes.
Mm-hmm.
Those athletic directors are from Washington State and Oregon State. Those are the 2 schools of the 10 remaining that most desperately need the Pac-10 to survive, the Pac-12 to survive,
mm-hmm.
because Four Corner schools have some options. Oregon and Washington, they're going to have some options. Cal and Stanford do not care. Could not care less.
No.
They'll start Ivy League West if they have to. Like, them being affiliated with the Pac-12 does not, I don't think, move them one way or another. Like, they're going to be fine. Their endowment is what it is. Their reputation academically is what it is. They're going to be all right. They'll find a place because of who they are. Washington State and Oregon State, they can't claim that. They're the ones that have the most interest in making this situation look good,
mm-hmm.
making it look tenable, making it look stable, because they need it to be.
Yeah.
Because the alternative for them is the Mountain West or the West Coast Conference.
Or alternately, you end up in a Pac-12, Pac-10, which, its charter keeps it as an Autonomy 5 program, at least for the time being. So they do get, that little extra bump toward getting in the postseason, I guess, into the playoff. But you end up with Oregon and Washington State, Oregon State, Washington State, Cal and Stanford, and then a bunch of Mountain West teams. Like, there's your bid, Boise. You finally got in. And Fresno and SMU and Colorado State. You did it. You finally got there.
So this is the thing, right? And when the last time we talked about this, I kind of made a short mention of this at the end of the conversation. I didn't really get to flesh this out.
Mm-hmm.
But this is something that Tim Fitzgerald has been adamant about when we've talked to him about this. There's 2 ways that you can look at where a school is in relation to how valuable it is in
mm-hmm.
terms of media rights. And I think the mistake that you make a lot of times is looking at the size of the media market. Like, yes, UCLA and USC being in the Los Angeles media market, that's a big deal because Los Angeles is Los Angeles.
Yeah.
But you can go too far in that direction, like I think the Big 12 maybe almost did when they first started to explore expansion and think about, well, Colorado State, we can get the Denver media market.
Yeah.
You know, or SMU, we can get more into the Dallas media market. The thing that the schools that have comprised the Big 12 for the longest, your land grant institutions, your heritage, your Big 8 members, your KUs and K-States and Iowa States and Oklahoma States. No, the places they are from are not big in population. But this is what they have that many schools out west do not have. What a lot of these schools in larger cities or larger metropolitan areas, but that have not been Power 5 schools, do not have. Passionate fan bases who will watch their schools on television regardless of whether they're doing well or not, of what time slot they're in, of whether they're on ESPN or ESPN2 or ESPNU, or if they've got to pay for what with $5.99 a month now for ESPN Plus. You're going to watch your Wildcats or your Jayhawks or your Cyclones or your Red Raiders because you're a diehard fan, because those are the kinds of fans that the Big 12 has. And the Pac-12 doesn't have those fans. No. They just don't. So, and there are schools in the Big 12 who have fans like that. I think Utah is probably top of that list. Utah is the most Big 12 school, I would argue, of the...
They're even more Big 12 than Colorado, which is funny because Colorado was a Big 8 member forever, but no, I agree with that. I really do.
In that sense, in terms of like the passion, the zeal with which, and that's, I mean, Colorado's in a tough spot because you're 45 minutes away from a 4-sports city.
Yeah.
And a NFL city.
And you haven't had success in a while.
Yeah, that's
which is the because and I'm sorry to cut into this, but I feel like for a program like that, if you're good, people are going to care. People are going to pay attention. Whereas Utah, you got the Jazz, and then I assume most people are either Utah or BYU.
Yeah,
depending on like how reformed or orthodox you are. Like that's pretty much how that area is broken down. So you're right, Colorado, just from my truly outsider perspective, it's just a tougher spot to succeed in that regard.
And that's not to say there are no passionate Colorado fans. Goodness knows, I know my share of passionate CU Buffalo football and basketball fans. They're out there. But yeah, Utah in that regard, I think even a little more passionate. Their passion maybe even outstrips Colorado fans in that way, and is more like what you see from Kansas State fans, from Texas Tech fans, from Iowa State fans. So the fans of those, again, those heritage Big 8, Big 12 schools. So that when you have those as your consumers, that's why you can take those consumers to market if you're Brett Yormark, and why you're able to jump the line and get your deal done, which, by the way, averages out to $31.67 million per year.
I knew there was a
school.
7 somewhere.
Yes, a 6 and a 7, both of them just on the other side of the decimal point. So it's $31.67 million on average per year per school right now.
Okay.
Adding schools adds time zones, adds inventory, adds value, because you're not just adding schools for the sake of adding schools to keep yourself at a number. Like the Big 12 can look and say, yeah, we're fine where we're at. We're going to have 12 schools. We're going to have 12 schools that have a lot of things in common. And we're going to have 12 schools. We get into 3 of the 4 major time slots on a college football Saturday. 4 of the 4, when you can include BYU. We're going to be in really good shape. They can afford to be choosy. They don't have to add Washington State or Oregon State to make the numbers work. They can say Utah makes a lot of sense. Really good football school. They're committed to basketball success over the long haul. Their women have been really good this year. Their men have made some strides forward. They've had a bumpy last few years, but we know historically Utah basketball has been pretty good. You can bring them aboard. Colorado, obviously pretty invested in football these days. Bringing in Coach Prime.
I had a thought, by the way. We were talking about this in the station earlier today when this report broke. Deion Sanders takes Colorado to David Booth Kansas Memorial Stadium, noon or 11 a.m. kickoff. Colorado doesn't fly out till the next morning. We might get Deion Sanders at the Hawk.
We might get Deion Sanders at the Hawk.
Or alternately, we see him at like Johnny Cause. Okay. There's so many great options for that. I need to see a picture of Deion Sanders in the Boom Boom Room badly.
Anyhow, Colorado, though, they've got that level of investment.
Yes,
they've been a solid basketball program over the last few years. Arizona is one of the best basketball programs in the country. You want to be the best basketball conference in the country? You could adding Arizona is going to help you quite a bit. Outstanding program.
Yeah.
And then you have Arizona State, which you accept them as coming along with Arizona, but it's not like Arizona State doesn't have money. It's not like Arizona State hasn't been successful.
Also Tempe.
Yes. Also, it's Tempe. Yes. Who doesn't love a roadie to Tempe?
The Big 12, and this is what I wanted when Yormark took over, and I think, obviously because of my influence. No, but, I mean, because it works for this group. The Big 12 knows what it is and what it wants to be, and that is why it is in a better spot than the Pac-12. That's why, really, it's in a better spot than the ACC as well. We haven't talked a lot about that. Florida State is openly, planning a mutiny against its own conference because they're saying, hey, we're the most valuable program in this league. We're not getting nearly enough of a payout. Figure it out. Best of luck to them.
Mm-hmm.
But the Big 12 knows exactly what it is. We're going to be competitive. You're going to be in football. We're going to have great games. You're going to watch us all day. If you live in the central time zone where most of our teams are, you're going to wake up. There's going to be a game at 11 a.m. You're going to see West Virginia at Cincinnati at 11 a.m. Then at 2:30, you're going to see the Sunflower Showdown. Then in the 6 o'clock window, guess what? You've got BYU versus Oklahoma State. And then at night, we're going to have the Territorial Cup, Arizona State. You can watch Big 12 football all day. The sun will never set on the Big 12 empire if they're able to do something like this. Shout out to Imperial England. Like that. And also, talking about knowing what you are, basketball. We're just going to be awesome at it. We're going to kick your ass all year long because we're going to have all of our already great programs. We're going to have Arizona. Cincinnati is a heritage program. Houston's been incredible. We're just going to dominate there.
Yes, we're going to be the conference that everybody talks about. Everybody wants to watch in college basketball.
And we're a little short on time, so we'll get to Gonzaga another time. But there's a note in this story, too, by the way, that Brett Yormark is actively, they use the word deep, in discussions with Gonzaga. That might legitimately happen, which, again, we'll have to say for another time because we got to get to a break here. But that's knowing what you are is so valuable. What's the phrase Jake always uses? What do you hang your hat on?
Mm-hmm.
The Big 12 knows exactly what that is. And it's, if we can't have SEC football, let's be good football you can watch all day long. That's a pretty damn good brand.
And we'll be the best basketball conference. And there's no big dog leading the rest of the conference around on a leash. And I think that's a big advantage.
Yeah.
Because everybody in the SEC and the Big Ten is on equal footing, right?
Mm-hmm.
With the there's some lesser footing than others, but there's not those. You don't have the Oklahoma-Texas conundrum that the Big 12 had.
Yeah.
You don't have the Washington-Oregon conundrum that they currently have. And you don't have the Florida State, Clemson, Miami maybe conundrum that the ACC is about to have. And I think that makes a big difference too.
Real quick, I just wanted to answer something here. Clayton asks on the YouTube comments feed, where are they going to put the Big 12 tournament, Oklahoma City or Dallas? I don't know where. I would assume it would be one of those, probably Dallas. I'm just saying there are whispers out there. It's probably going to be moved because there's bigger markets than Kansas City, and they want to make it a thing. They want to make it an event. I don't like it. I wish it would stay at the T-Mobile Center forever. I just don't think that's going to happen.
Vegas?
Yeah, okay, it'll probably go to Vegas. Every conference, the Big Ten is going to play its conference tournament in Vegas at some point.
Yeah, they are.
It absolutely is going to happen. We've got to get to our first commercial break. We'll play a quick round of Change My Mind next on 580 Sports Talk. Quick round of Change My Mind here on 580 Sports Talk. Matt Derrick will join us in just a couple minutes. Change My Mind. The biggest what if in sports history is the 2020 NCAA tournament. This was prompted by a tweet I saw today about what's the biggest what if in college basketball history. One of them listed the Gordon Hayward shot. That's a very easy answer. Butler wins the national championship. Anyway, biggest in sports history, the 2020 NCAA championship or NCAA tournament.
Man, I think certainly is the biggest in Sunflower State sports history because I think Kansas wins the 2020 national championship. I think we get an all Big 12 final. I think Kansas and Baylor were the two best teams that year.
Baylor over Dayton.
Yeah.
Ooh, spicy. I like it.
Dayton was good. They had Final Four ability, but I thought Kansas and Baylor were the two best teams.
Yeah. So
I will grant certainly in Sunflower State history, but biggest what if in sports history, man, I don't know if there are a lot of COVID related what ifs that probably belong in their own conversation.
That's true. That's definitely true.
Biggest sports what if of all time. Gosh, it's probably, I want to make sure I get the team right. What is yours? Let me make sure I look this up. I want to get this right.
I'm inherently and insanely biased toward the 2020 NCAA tournament because I'm still bitter over it. I think we could have ended up with a 2 Big 12, 2 mid-major Final Four with KU, Baylor, Dayton, and San Diego State that year. It was such a good year of basketball. KU was so freaking good, and I'm definitely not over it. If you want to go back, like, historically, I'm reading The League by John Eisenberg, I believe is his last name. Really good book. At one point in time, George Halas borrowed money, like literally that his children had sitting around in their house to continue funding the Chicago Bears in the early days of the NFL. Like any number of 100 different things that happened in the early days of that league, it probably does not survive the 1920s. Like that's kind of a big general one for our most popular sport, but It was hanging on by a thread for years.
Man, here's mine. The Boston Red Sox tried out both Jackie Robinson and Willie Mays and chose not to sign them. And in fact, did not have a black player play for them until Pumpsie Green in 1959. They were famously the last of the major league teams to integrate.
Love the Yankees.
Yeah. What if Jackie Robinson, Willie Mays, and Ted Williams in the same lineup?
That's a good one.
What if?
We never get the movie Fever Pitch.
Oh, thank God. God, that would have been wonderful.
You don't like Fever Pitch?
The baseball one, no. The original book, it's about soccer. The original book and film with Colin Firth. It's a delightful English comedy. It did not need to be remade with Jimmy Dan Fallon.
I think it's enjoyable enough. It's fine. Is that still better than Trouble with the Curve for you?
Oh, Trouble with the Curve is the worst movie I've ever seen.
There you go. Do you ever change my mind?
Legitimately the worst movie. What if we traded a draft pick? You can't do that. Do any research. Any research about baseball. You can't trade draft picks. Do you know anything about the sport before you made the movie?
Do you ever change my mind for us?
Shout out to the Big O Tires text line. What if Bo Jackson didn't get hurt? That's another great one.
That's a good one.
That's another great one. What if Len Bias doesn't OD have to get drafted by the Celtics? That's another good one too.
Yep.
I don't have to change my mind today. Let's just we want to talk to Matt Derrick. Let's talk to Matt Derrick.
Let's get to Matt Derrick. He'll join us next here on 580 Sports Talk. He makes a mean Charlotte Royale, loves Olivia Newton-John's country catalog, and covers the Chiefs better than anybody for ChiefsDigest.com. His name is Matt Derrick. You can find him on Twitter at Matt Derrick, and he joins us every Friday, bottom of the 3 o'clock hour, for our Herman's Meat and Smokehouse Chiefs Insider. What's going on, Matt? How are you?
Right now, I am just sitting around waiting for Saturday Night Live to start. This should be a crazy one.
So I just saw this from your Twitter, actually. I didn't see the Chiefs put this out a little bit earlier, but apparently Creed Humphrey is also going to be making an appearance along with Travis Kelce tomorrow night.
I mean, he put it on his Instagram that it looks like a sign for Creed Humphrey's dressing room at Saturday Night Live. So I'm assuming this is a thing.
Which Chiefs player, Matt, do you think would have the best cameo? Because Travis Kelce, I think we all agree, I think he's going to crush it. He's going to have so much fun doing this, and he's a natural fit, I think, for something like this. But what other Chiefs player, maybe not star player, but what other Chiefs player do you think would have the best time and maybe be the best fit for sketch comedy, live sketch comedy?
I mean, there's quite a few, and I think Frank Clark would be beat too many times, But Tommy Townsend, I mean, come on, that's what I think I would need to see. The punter, absolutely. I mean, Tommy would rock it. There's no doubt about that.
We need more of that flow on TV too.
Exactly, he's got that. So I the Chiefs have got a locker room full of players. They got a lot of characters.
I wouldn't
mind seeing Chris Jones.
I was going to say, I feel like Chris Jones would be a good option for this. He's very what word? Personable, almost bubbly when he's in a good mood.
He is, and probably any of the offensive linemen except my dear friend Joe Tooney, because Joe is just a little too Terminator-ish. But those guys know how to have a good time too.
That is definitely true. A little Terminator-ish. I love that. Matt, the big rumor surrounding the Chiefs, at least in internet football fan circles as of late, is that they might be interested in DeAndre Hopkins, the star wide receiver for the Arizona Cardinals. He's owed a ton of money from them. I am of the personal belief they are going to suck out loud this coming season. It looks like they are in a really bad spot. New coaches, new coordinators. Their quarterback is hurt. Hopkins likely wants out. I don't know what it would cost to get him. First of all, before we get to would the Chiefs do it, does that make sense fit-wise for the Chiefs?
I mean, I think it does. I mean, obviously, I think you can just about plug anybody into the Chiefs offense that would make sense. And I don't know if there's any red flags that would really be out there about Hopkins, about being someone who would not, fit in well with the Chiefs, kind of chemistry and ethic. I mean, it seems like he would be the kind of guy who would fit. And certainly, I think his skill set would. Even the money that he's due, I mean, that's a lot. His base for this year's 19.4. He's got another one, 14.9 for next year. I don't know. It is a lot for a guy who's going to be 31, 32 in those contract years. I mean, there's certainly you could possibly whittle that down and move the money around a little bit. I mean, the Chiefs are always going to be interested. I mean, anytime that there's a guy that's on the market, I mean, hey, Brett Veach is going to do his homework. They're going to kick the tires on it. I don't know how serious the interest really is here. I mean, sometimes just the Chiefs, expressing some interest and researching something can get taken out of context for being really hot on the trail. I don't know that they are necessarily, but I don't think fit-wise it would be a problem.
How likely is it that the Chiefs are even going to pick up the phone on this one? I saw Eric Eager from Sumer Sports tweet out the opinion yesterday that, when is the last time that the Chiefs' best receiving option was a guy whose best skill was contested catches and winning jump balls? And the answer is it's been quite a while. So I don't know that it's for sure going to happen. I doubt it's a for sure thing, but how likely do you think it is, Matt, that Brett Veach at least makes a call?
Oh, I think he's absolutely calling to see what it would cost. And, and you probably have to talk to DeAndre Hopkins too. I mean, if I remember correctly, I think he represents himself still. So if you're going to trade for him and you need to, move some money around, you got to have to talk to the player himself. So, and maybe that's a factor as well. You're right. I mean, it's a difficult situation. I mean, the Cardinals at least have an out. I mean, they still have a lot of, cap money tied up in him. I think dead cap for the end would be like $22 million. That's a big bite for them to take. And you're right. I mean, it may not be a good situation to have a player who I think wants to win in a place where they're probably not going to win right now. I mean, if I'm the Cardinals, I wouldn't want to give him away for cheap, but it's a difficult situation. I mean, if I'm the Chiefs at the same time, I mean, what am I giving away? Am I sending a first-round pick for Hopkins at this point? I don't think that's in my price point. I think it's got to be a lot less consideration than that.
Our guest is Matt Derrick of ChiefsDigest.com. He joins us every Monday at this time here on 580 Sports Talk. You find Matt's work at ChiefsDigest.com, and you can find him on Twitter at Matt Derrick. Matt, if you had to put a number on it, what percentage would you say you would give the likelihood that the Chiefs and Frank Clark are able to come to an agreement that would bring Clark back for 2023 at a cap figure that is not offensive to the veteran Clark and that would make sense for the Chiefs, given the player that Clark is at this stage and the flexibility the Chiefs are looking for?
Yeah, I'm pretty bullish on it. I mean, I do think it will get done. I'm going to say 65%. I think it's a pretty good chance. It seems like both sides are interested in it. You never know what the market for Clark could be. I mean, I do get the sense there's at least a couple of teams that would be interested. That if he hits to the free market, if the Chiefs are forced to release him for cap-related reasons, and he can entertain some offers from other teams, that maybe there's another team that comes in and blows him away. But I get the sense the Chiefs would be very interested in bringing Frank back on something similar to what his deal was last year, which, was essentially, I think, $8.3 million with a chance to bump it up to between 11 and 12 with incentives. That's probably the same kind of deal you're talking about. And to me, hey, $6 to $8 million guaranteed for Frank with a bunch of incentives, I think would make sense for both sides. The question is, hey, if he gets to March 15th and can talk to other teams, well, would somebody else better that offer? And I just have a hard time getting a grasp for what the market is for Frank Clark right now.
What is the first domino that has to fall for the Chiefs to start doing, whether it's restructuring Clark or giving Chris Jones a long-term deal, finalizing the long-term deal with Orlando Brown Jr.? What is that first domino that you think has to fall? The thing that once the Chiefs are done with that, it will inform how they're able to approach the rest of their offseason?
I mean, I think Brett Veach would tell you right now the number one domino is figuring out Orlando Brown. I mean, that would settle a lot of questions across the board. And it may not be the one that you can settle immediately. I mean, you expect that the Chiefs are going to tag Orlando before Tuesday's deadline if nothing gets done. And we certainly have had no indications that anything is going to get done. And a contract extension and franchise tag aren't the only options. I mean, you can certainly put trade and some other scenarios into place for Orlando Brown. But, whereas, hey, you can release Frank Clark to free up some cap space if you need to, and you can still bring him back. You can, if you need to, in a pinch, I mean, you can free up some other cap space, like reworking Patrick Mahomes' deal. Joe Thuney can kind of fit into that category as well. You got options to save some money, but I mean, there's so much really that just depends short-term and long-term about Orlando Brown. That's the one that it doesn't necessarily have to come before anything else, but it would make it so much easier if you had that rectified and at least an idea about what your costs were going to be on Orlando, or at least on the left tackle position now and into the future.
Matt Derrick is our guest, covers the Kansas City Chiefs for ChiefsDigest.com. You can find him on Twitter at Matt Derrick. And, of course, go to ChiefsDigest.com for all of his tremendous coverage of the Kansas City Chiefs. He joins us here every Friday at the bottom of the 3 o'clock hour on 580 Sports Talk for our Herman's Meat and Smokehouse Chiefs Insider. Is it a done deal, Matt, that the tag is going to Orlando Brown?
I think so. I mean, because on the one side, I simply can't see these two sides getting a deal done before Tuesday. So, that's the deadline for applying the tag. So I think it's going to happen. I mean, there was part of me that figured it wouldn't be surprised if it happened this afternoon, just before the 5 o'clock news dump. It wouldn't be past the Chiefs and teams in the NFL to do that. But hey, the tag keeps the options open. I mean, you're going to be able to negotiate with Orlando after that. So, I mean, it keeps the window, and like I said, I can't imagine anything getting resolved in essentially the next 3 days.
Let's talk a little NFL draft here. How was the combine? How was Indy?
It was fun. It was good. I mean, it was kind of a whirlwind trip. I didn't stick around for all the festivities over the last couple of days and the workouts and everything like that. So, didn't get the full experience, but it does feel like the combine is after COVID is a little bit smaller. Maybe I'm wrong. It just feels a little bit different than in past years. And I don't think as many agents are there. Usually the agents come in because there's a all agents meeting, but this year they're doing it again virtually, as I understand. So maybe that's the presence of it, that there's just not as many other people around. The teams, I think, are even probably sending a few less people as well. I mean, especially because the main thing about being able to be at the combine used to be talking to the players, and you get those 20-minute meetings. Well, now they get up to 3 1-hour Zooms with these players during the draft process, and that makes the combine a lot less important. So, I mean, other than the medicals and the workouts, which you get all the numbers for, I don't know if the combine has the same meaning that it used to.
What is the Chiefs traveling contingent like to the combine? I know that Andy Reid obviously spoke earlier in the week. Brett Veach speaks as well, but more and more teams are not sending position coaches. They're not sending coordinators. Some don't send their head coaches there anymore. I know the Packers are one of those teams that's joined that group this year. They said, hey, Matt LaFleur, you've got better things to do elsewhere. Don't even bother going to Indy. What does that group look like for the Chiefs? Is it just Veach and Reid? Is it a bigger group than that? Who all travels?
Yeah, it is a bigger group than that, and I unfortunately don't have the full roll call about who's there. I know Matt Nagy was going to be coming into town for a little bit. Usually, I think the coordinators would be there. Maybe not always Dave Tobe. I mean, that's not the thing. I mean, at this point, you're talking about special teams, and I think most of his would be film work. But that's a big part of it is that it's tight quarters. I mean, I would expect that there's probably at least half dozen, front office people who are in for the Chiefs. I don't get the sense that all the coaches went for sure. And honestly, I mean, probably the bigger part is their contention because it's the NFL these days. They're sending their content people. They send film crews and all their production people out to do interviews because they want to have that stuff available. If they draft one of these players, they want to be able to have their combine interviews and everything like that. So that's a bigger and bigger part of the combine, honestly, is just the teams doing their own interviews and all their own video.
Has anything jumped off the page to you so far about what's going on at the combine? Either something maybe you heard, if you want to let us in on a juicy secret, but also anything in terms of the workouts, measurements, interview, gossip, anything like that that's really stood out to you so far?
The one thing on the opening day, that day when the coaches and the GMs come in, and Pete Carroll was on the podium right next to where Andy Reid was going to be like an hour earlier. And I mean, of course, everybody was there just wanting to know what Pete was going to say about Russell Wilson trying to get him fired. So that was kind of, I think that most people got excited on day one. Other than that, I mean, you're seeing the workouts. I mean, I know the defensive tackle that ran the fastest 40 in history is getting everybody excited. It's crazy though, because that's the thing, is that you get these numbers, and it's so often that you hear about the workouts and everything like this that guys will have, and how often do they turn into anything? I mean, so many times, either good or bad, the workouts become irrelevant. It's what the player has done before and what they've been that usually stands out. I mean, the combine, if you're paying attention to it, I mean, it is there only to truly reinforce or to weaken whatever it is that you believe in a player right now.
Matt, as of right now, we are 8 weeks from the draft. 8 weeks from yesterday will be round one of the NFL draft. Right now on March 3rd, what position do you think the Chiefs are going in round one?
I would right now, my smart money, if I had to just put it down on a bet about which position it would be, I think it's going to be a lineman either way. I mean, I think edge and tackle are both big positions. I think looks like there could be some value at the end of the first round, but at 31, there's a lot of things could happen. I mean, Chiefs could trade up, they could trade back. There might be some value. I posed to someone this question the other day, and I'd be curious to see what you guys think. Consensus is that Bijan Robinson from Texas is the number one running back in this draft, and by far. If he's sitting there at 31, do you take him?
Man, he's such a good player. We've seen him so much in the last few years playing against KU, playing against K-State, and all the other games Texas is on TV. He is such a talented player. You look at the film and you look at all these things you might not notice at first glance that he does well. But I feel like I'm a little bit scarred by the Clyde Edwards-Helaire situation. Not that Clyde's necessarily a bad player, but it just feels like it hasn't really worked out. That was the last pick of the first round. I think I'm just a little bit too scarred in that regard. But he's clearly a good player, which makes the whole what is the value of running backs question so interesting.
Yeah, that's one of the things I did hear a lot at the combine was, this year is, you can't take a running back in the first round unless it's Bijan Robinson. And yeah, I wondered, because the Chiefs have been done that well before, but for a team that's showing off a Super Bowl championship and doesn't have any glaring needs, would you consider it?
That's fascinating. That's a really good question. We're going to dive into that more. We'll get closer and closer to the draft, look at some of the needs the Chiefs do indeed have, and we'll do it all with Matt Derrick of ChiefsDigest.com. He joins us every single Friday here on 580 Sports Talk for our Herman's Meat and Smokehouse Chiefs Insider. Go check out his work at Chiefs Digest. Find him on Twitter at Matt Derrick. Matt, we appreciate the time, my friend. We'll talk to you soon.
You guys are the best. Take care, everybody.
That is Matt Derrick from the 4 o'clock hour of the show. Yeah, almost got the time wrong. We've got What Is Wrong With You, College Hoops, and more on 580 Sports Talk. Hey now, 4 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk. Just getting started. Brendan Dworzynski and Dan Lucero here with you. Thank you so much for stopping by this edition of the program. Thank you, as always, to Matt Derrick for joining us as well last hour. If you missed our conversation with Matt Derrick, our Herman's Meat and Smokehouse Chiefs insider, or if you missed our talk about the Big 12 and Pac-12, changed my mind, any of that, you can head on over to our website. That's 580wibw.com. Click on the podcast tab, really hover over the podcast tab, then click on 580 Sports Talk, and that's where you'll find the hour-by-hour breakdown of the show. Coming up in this 4 o'clock hour of the program, we're going to get to our previews for the weekend for K-State and KU. The Cats are in Morgantown. The Jayhawks are in Austin. We'll get to previews for those two games coming up in just a moment. We'll find our weekly winner in What Is Wrong With You, and we'll get to the rest of the college basketball action around the country this weekend and the next couple of days just in general. I don't know if you've seen this on social media in the last 5 to 10 minutes. We just had a buzzer beater win down at the Big South tournament.
Oh, baby.
USC Upstate. The Spartans of South Carolina Upstate beat Gardner-Webb on a buzzer beater banked in 3. This is March.
This is March.
Yeah. Awesome stuff.
Can you name the active NBA player who went to South Carolina Upstate?
Went to USC Upstate. No, I don't think I can.
I better make sure that I'm not lying to you about this player, but I'm pretty certain former Denver Nugget Torrey Craig is a USC Upstate Spartan.
How about that? Yeah, Torrey Craig. How about that?
SC Upstate, current Phoenix Sun.
There was also briefly a player in the 80s named Mike Gibson who went there. Interesting. I think it was a junior college at the time when he was there. Yeah, he played 2 years in the NBA, 2 non-consecutive seasons in the NBA. So good, Torrey Craig. He's had quite a nice career. He's a nice player.
Yeah, he helped the Bucks win the title a couple years ago.
Yeah, real solid role player in the NBA. Yeah, very excited for Champ Week coming up next week. A lot of conference tournaments already going on. Since you have spent a lot of your brain power and time and energy this college basketball season on the West Coast Conference, are you going to be watching the WCC tournament much?
Yeah, I'll check it out. The beloved Pepperdine Waves are no longer participating, however, after they took it on the chin against Pacific last night. What a frustrating... Like, they've got a guy who's going to be drafted in the first round of the NBA draft this coming year in Maxwell Lewis.
At Pepperdine!
Yes. They have legitimate, I think, talent. Mm-hmm. And they won 9 games.
That's what happens when, was it Romar who's still there?
Lorenzo Romar is there.
That's kind of what he does.
Do they, I frequently watch them and wondered things like, do they have plays? And do they run a defense? And did these guys just meet 15 minutes before tip-off? And who taught Houston Millett how to shoot? I've had lots of thoughts about Pepperdine Waves basketball. Not a lot of them good.
Houston Millett. That is an extremely mid-major name. That's tremendous. Yeah, I mean, they only won 9 games all year. That's pretty rough for a team that has... in a conference that is that weak, you need to be able to... If you've got an NBA player, you have to at least have a winning record. I mean, you should be a borderline tournament team. Yes. You should win enough games.
Yes, that's exactly what they should have been. Instead, they won 9 games. And I know Ken Palm had them as one of the 5 most unlucky teams in college basketball, but still, there's so unlucky you can be.
Right.
Hey, can we do a little breaking news about a high school state championship coming back to the capital city?
Yes, please do.
Congratulations to Washburn Rural Boys Bowling.
How about that?
Team state champions in Class 6A.
Washburn Rural having a darn good year.
Yeah, they are.
Really darn good year. Girls won volleyball. The football team had another tremendous year, including a playoff win.
Girls soccer good as always.
Girls soccer good. The boys soccer team is going to be great, again, coming up in the near future. Boys bowling, obviously. Girls are in contention for another state championship. They'll play Topeka High coming up on Saturday. Boys team could earn a bid to state tonight. They will take on Derby. We've got high school hoops coming your way this evening, by the way, our 580 Preps Road to a Championship. We will have full game coverage for you from Shawnee Heights versus Highland Park. That will be our featured game tonight. That's where myself and the coach, Larry Latimer, will be this evening. Dan will be heading to the House of Blues. Washburn Rural taking on Derby in boys play. Winner of that game will be heading to the state tournament for the 6A boys. Pre-game coverage starts at 6:45. Tip-off is at 7 o'clock for both games. So we'll have the one game in full. We'll have updates from the other throughout the night here on 580 WIBW. Shout out to the Junior Blues. It's very cool for their bowling team.
Also, shout out to the texter on the Big O Tires text line who is shouting out Doug Christie, maybe the most famous basketball player from Pepperdine University. I don't even think that's a maybe.
So. Yeah, I feel like that's pretty locked in.
Yeah, I mean, shout out to Colby Ross was the kid who was really good for them the last few years because he's a Denver kid.
Yeah.
Shout out to Dwayne Pulley Sr., whose son played high major college basketball. I think at USC, I want to say. Dwayne Pulley's son. Maybe Rutgers, something like that.
Can you name, and I will confirm this here, the one NBA player currently who went to Pepperdine, who is currently actively on a team?
No, I cannot.
Does the name Kessler Edwards ring a bell?
Yes, Kessler Edwards does ring a bell. Yeah.
Kessler Edwards plays for the Kings. If you did not know that name or know that he played for the Kings, you are certainly not alone in that regard. I've told you this story before. My buddy, who is a huge Big South tournament fan, has been blowing up my Twitter timeline all day talking about it. All day. It's outrageous. Like,
did SC Upstate make him a little scratch or?
No, he just tweeted moments ago, as Julius Caesar once said, ouch, and then posted his nighttime games, his picture of the night games. He is not an especially good gambler, but Big South tournament, always a winner. I don't understand. He's a savant in that regard. It's very strange. I've mentioned this friend of mine before. He is both the funniest and dumbest person I know. Both of those things. One of the story I have a very vivid memory of, 2 different times going to his dorm. We lived across the street from each other when we were at KU. We went to high school together, and then we went to KU together. And we lived across the street. One time I went over to his dorm, and he tells me, dude, I feel so sick. And I said, well, A, why'd you ask me to come over? And B, why do you feel sick? And he told me he had 2 full pizzas and 3 sandwiches on his own the night before from Pickleman's in Lawrence. And I thought, that's disgusting. How? I love me some Pickleman's. That's gross. No wonder you feel sick. Another time, he texted me, it was the morning of the Kentucky Derby. And he texted me and says, hey, you want to come over and watch the Derby? And I said, yeah, sure. I'll be there this afternoon. I get there, 15 minutes to post time. His roommate, who also went to high school with us, opens the door and says, hey, man, how's it going? I said, yo, what's up? My friend is under his covers on his bunk, throws them off and screams at me and goes, what are you doing here? It's like, what the hell happened? You texted me to come over. Apparently that morning he had tried mushrooms for the first time.
Oh, boy.
And he was high as hell all day. So I come over like, why am I the one who gets stuck with this? Why do I have to babysit you while you're on shrooms for the first time? Again,
was that an enjoyable way to watch the Kentucky Derby? I have to know.
Yeah, it seemed fine. And then for a while, his roommate left. We just kind of hung out, and he played the guitar, and we just chatted for a while.
I imagine it'd be like that GIF that floats around the internet sometimes where, like, all the horses are weird. Like, one's got the really long neck. One runs like a dog.
Pretty much.
The other one's running sideways on its hind legs.
Funniest and dumbest person I know. I wish everyone knew someone like that in their life. He is just outrageously funny. He texted me a while back. He was in Kansas City at a wedding, and he texted me and asked me for a pick for the next day's NFL slate. I gave him one that lost. I hope he didn't remember it. And immediately after I texted him, he FaceTimes me. I'm like, dude, we've known each other for 10 years. We've never FaceTimed. Why are we doing this now? It was in a parking lot at a Cane's in Kansas City. Very odd guy.
When did you know he was about to do it?
I did know he was about to do it. He said, guess where I am? I said, well, I can see the sign behind you. Everyone needs a friend like that in their life. Let's get you some college basketball. Speaking of, here on 580 Sports Talk. KU and K-State both play this weekend. Let's start with K-State because I think they've got more on the line here. KU is still probably playing for a top 2 overall seed, maybe the number 1 overall, definitely a trip to Kansas City. But K-State can still move around a lot in the Big 12 tournament. I think would like to get a positive road win going into the Big 12 tournament. They win this game, they might be locked into a 2 seed. That is certainly possible. West Virginia is as desperate as can be. They need a win badly. Badly. They're probably not getting into the tournament without a win coming up tomorrow. If they do win, and certainly if they get one in the Big 12 tournament, I think they will make it in probably as a Dayton team. It's going to be tough, though, if they don't beat K-State this weekend. K-State's won 4 in a row. They're playing very well overall. They've got all this momentum behind them from their home finale earlier on in the week. And West Virginia is beloved by the metrics. They have been loved by Ken Pom and Bart Torvik and the net and all of these different advanced numbers and way to rank teams in college basketball this year. But I'm just not sure they're good. I mean, they're better than most teams in college basketball, obviously, but are they Big 12 good? I just don't think so. I think at this point of the year, you are what your record says you are. So part of me says K-State should win this game because you just boil it down to who's coaching better right now. I love me some Bob Huggins, but the answer is Jerome Tang. Who's got the better overall players? It's K-State by a mile. Who's got more momentum? It's K-State by a mile. So who should win? Kansas State. But desperation is a dangerous thing. And West Virginia is as desperate as any team in the Big 12 has been all year, I think, to get a win this weekend.
Yeah, I kind of feel that way, too. Joe Lunardi actually has West Virginia in his last 4 byes, which would suggest that maybe their position on the bubble is a little more stable than you might otherwise feel like it is. But, yeah, I think certainly that's the mentality they have to take into a game on Saturday.
Yeah.
Is they need that win. That and... You know, I'm always careful about betting against a team on senior night. Not everybody has the literally 40-year history of not losing on senior night that Kansas does, but that's a powerful motivator, right? You want to send your seniors out on a high note. You want to close the building for the year on a high note, give your fans something to cheer about. So, yeah, there's a lot more to play for West Virginia probably than there is for Kansas State. And that motivation is going to make it a tough spot for Kansas State. K-State has to match that. That's what the trick is going to be. If Kansas State can match the energy and match the intensity of West Virginia, then I think all other things being equal, they probably will win because West Virginia to me seems so dependent on Eric Stevenson and Trey Mitchell making shots.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm sorry to cut you off, but that's what the whole strategy was when they played KU a couple weekends or last weekend. It was, well, Eric Stevenson better make shots. And he did, and it worked, and it was only a 2-point loss at Allen Fieldhouse. That's not a bad loss. But against K-State, if Stevenson shoots 40%, they might get run out of their own building.
K-State has been one of the best 3-point defense teams in the country this season, one of the best in the Big 12 this season. So if they can continue that and run West Virginia off the 3-point line and the Mountaineers don't shoot it great from 3, I'll like Kansas State's chances. The other thing I'll be watching for in this one is, can Naquan Tomlin keep up his recent run of success? He's been playing really well lately. We talked about that coming out of Wednesday night's game. Can he keep that up? Can he stay out of foul trouble? Because West Virginia's got a little bit of bulk. Like they can throw some big guys at you and play a little bit. It's not really bully ball, but they can get the ball inside on you and they can try and score around the rim. So Naquan Tomlin's got to defend smart, stay out of foul trouble. If he does that, he's able to play 25, 30 minutes. Can he, knock down another corner 3 or 2? Can he continue to contribute on the offensive end? Because you really want your best guys playing well going into the tournament. That's the case for Keontae Johnson. Certainly think that Marquise Noel has started to find his shooting stroke again. But if you can get that third option going, that's when you're going to feel really, really good about what you can do in March. And Naquan Tomlin, again, for me, is that guy for Kansas State. So I'll have my eye on him. This is a tough spot. And I don't think it will reflect poorly on Kansas State if they lose, unless they just get drummed. And I don't see them getting run out of the building. I don't see them losing by 30. This is certainly a spot where it is going to be about, can you match the edge? Can you match the hunger and the desperation of the opponent on the road? It's a hard thing to do, but if K-State's up for it, it speaks very, very highly of them.
Okay, so I agree with you that the best option, best possible outcome in terms of that third option for K-State is Naquan Tomlin. Who do you rely on more? Or who do you think you would be able to rely on more, Tomlin or Sills? Because I think the ceiling is higher with Tomlin, as we talked about earlier this week. The ceiling is way higher with Naquan Tomlin. But right now, if you're saying, hey, we need somebody to go do something for us, do you go with Tomlin, just hypothetically, because he is the higher potential player and because he's been hot recently, or is Sills maybe a little bit more consistent, and that's maybe where you put a little more trust?
And a veteran, too. I mean, the fact that Desi Sills is a senior probably factors into that, and I think that Kansas State will get quality play from Desi Sills. I just think that I feel like Tomlin's the guy that's the ceiling raiser because he's 6'10", and you just don't have a lot of answers for a guy that size and with that kind of ability. If he's playing well, if he's on the floor, if he's knocking down shots, there's not a lot you can do against a guy like that. Like there are things you can throw at a guard with average size like Desi Sills, but there's so much you can do with Naquan Tomlin if he's feeling it.
That's true. No, I think that's an entirely fair point. Do you think K-State gets it done? I'm leaning toward yes. I am at a point where we had this discussion about Oklahoma State the other day.
Right.
We were talking about how there's desperation, and then there's a line to this team's just not good. Like they're desperate to get wins and get into the tournament, and then maybe they're not very good this year. I'm at that point with West Virginia. I think I am beyond, man, the metrics love them, and there's clearly something there, and they just need to build a little momentum, et cetera, et cetera. I think they just might not be a very good team overall, and I would not pick them in my bracket. I would not bet on them in the NCAA tournament, and I just don't think they're a very good team right now. I would take K-State in this game this weekend. I don't think I've seen a spread as of yet for this game.
I think it's West Virginia by 3.5.
West Virginia minus 3.5. Yeah, I'd take K-State. I really would. I know West Virginia needs the win more, but I like the way K-State is playing a lot better.
Yeah, I think K-State is definitively the better team. I know maybe Ken Palm wouldn't agree, but I think K-State has proven with their body of work, the wins that they have, that they're a better team. And
no doubt,
it's a lot of points to give a team that's the better team. I might be inclined to wager on Kansas State if I were inclined to wager on this one.
Where do the two of them, how do they compare in Ken Palm right now? I'm pulling it up as we speak. Kansas State is currently ranked 18th in the country by Ken Palm. That's one spot ahead of West Virginia.
And first time, I think all year they've been above West Virginia. That's fairly new.
West Virginia's 19th in the country in that metric.
Yeah, with a 17-13 record. The next highest rated team with that many losses, with 13 losses, is Oregon at 41st.
That's crazy. Like, I'm amazed that the numbers have West Virginia as the 17th best offense in the country. I watched them in person at Allen Fieldhouse last Saturday. You're telling me there's only 16 offenses better than that in the country? They barely had an offense.
Yeah, that's wild to me, right?
And I understand it's not that simple,
yeah,
but still.
Sometimes the eye test and the numbers don't add up, right? Mm-hmm. And I think West Virginia has been one of those cases for me all year, because there are times when you watch them and they look great. But most of those times are just Eric Stevenson's hitting a bunch of tough shots.
Yeah.
Trey Mitchell's hitting a bunch of tough shots. Keedy Johnson is making a bunch of and one layups. Like, they've got some pieces that I like, but
the sum of the parts stinks. It's not good.
I mean, they got to 17-13 for a reason. I mean, you look at what they did against the good teams in the league. They lost twice to Kansas. They were competitive the second time around, but they lost twice to Kansas. Baylor, they lost twice to Baylor, once by 5, once by a dozen. They lost twice to Texas, once by 8, once by 34. They split with TCU. They got TCU at home and then lost to them without Mike Miles. That was the Mike Miles-less TCU coming out of the Big 12 SEC Challenge.
Yeah.
And, yeah, Kansas State got him in overtime in the first game of the Big 12 regular season.
Right now, looking at Joe Lunardi's bracketology, he's got...
They're one of the last 4 buys.
Yeah, he's got them as the 11 seed in the South Regional, playing Northwestern in the first round. I would take 6 seed Northwestern in a heartbeat. No question.
I think I would, too. Ken Palm would not advise that, but I think I would, too.
By the way, speaking of the Ken Palm
Northwestern's 49th in the Ken
Palm. Speaking of Ken Palm, KU, as of today, no longer has the hardest schedule in the country. They are now second in strength of schedule.
How about that?
Can you guess who number 1 is?
I cannot guess who number 1 is.
If you think about it, it makes some sense because they have had to play the 9 best teams in the Big 12. It's Oklahoma.
It's Oklahoma, yeah. Yeah. Their strength of schedule gets dragged down because they don't get to play themselves.
And the crazy thing is, Their non-conference is ranked 74th in the country. And the Big 12 is so hard. They have the number one strength of schedule overall in the nation out of 363 teams. That is absolutely crazy. Truly, truly insane. As for KU, they're taking Texas on this weekend. A few different ways to look at this game. One, the way that favors Texas is they've probably got more to play for NCAA tournament seeding wise, not looking at location necessarily, but just looking at best option, best seed possible. I think they're probably a 2. There's probably a situation where they could fall to a 3, depending on how some other teams play. UCLA, Arizona, Gonzaga, Kansas State, teams like that could bump them out of the 2. Baylor as well. They're also in the contention for a number 2 seed. So they've got a little to play for there. They are probably super PO'd after they lost to TCU this week. That knocked them out of the Big 12 championship race, that they didn't even get to this game where they would have had a share of the title on the line at home, last game of the year, momentum after a ranked win. They don't have any of that, so there's probably an element of anger that's going to go in, or bitterness that's going to go into this game. I imagine Rodney Terry, who the players really respond to, or at least appear to really respond to, is going to have them fired up for this one. And again, it's in Austin. And KU doesn't have a whole lot to play for in terms of the league anymore. I mean, they've won the title outright. It is not going away. KU this year will be the only Big 12 champion. On the other side, and Self pointed this out yesterday during his media session, KU's got something to play for here. They would like to go to Des Moines and Kansas City. Now they're going to Des Moines. That's pretty much set in stone at this point. First weekend of the NCAA tournament, KU is going to go play in Des Moines. But getting the Kansas City regional, that would obviously be nice. You get something of a quote-unquote home court advantage, possibly getting to play at the T-Mobile Center. That's not the be-all, end-all, but that would certainly be nice. So there is something for KU to still be playing for in this game. Bill Self's teams just don't lose games late in the year. Like, I think it's twice in 20 years they've lost their final game of the season. Never at home. They've won every every senior day game since 1984. They've only, I think, lost twice. And the last one, if I remember correctly, wasn't all that long ago. I remember losing to, or maybe it was 3 times. I remember losing to Oklahoma State a couple years ago. Frank Mason's last regular season game. They had won the Big 12. They went to Oklahoma State. Mason nearly hit a triple-double, and they lost. That was not a fun game. How do you pick against Bill Self in any March game, especially one that is both March and the regular season? How do you pick against his team there?
This, though, is the last game for Kansas. It doesn't really mean anything. Like there's nothing at stake for Kansas, at least not tangibly at stake for Kansas in this game. It would be understandable if the mind of a 18 to 22-year-old basketball player were to wander a little bit in those circumstances. But when you've got the best coach in America, Bill Self, and you've got some veteran players, I think the message will be received loud and clear. Like, this is not, we're not load managing anybody here today. We're not treating this as a blow off. We're not playing Michael Jankovic 15 minutes off the bench. Your objective remains the same. And I think there would be a lot of teams where I would expect a letdown in a situation like this. A lot of schools, a lot of programs where I would expect a letdown in a situation like this. I don't expect it from Kansas. Does that mean it won't happen? No, but I don't expect it from them.
I would agree with you there. This team is tough. They are gritty. I think that's going to show in this game. Give me Kansas 79-77. That's going to be my final score prediction. 79-77.
Texas is a 2.5-point favorite, I believe.
And that's understandable.
Yeah.
At home. Well, I mean,
at home.
You take out home court advantage, that's essentially a pick 'em.
Is it 3 points in basketball like it is in football?
You know, I just sort of have always assumed that, but I actually don't know. We'll look that up. We've got to get to a commercial break first. We'll get to what is wrong with you next. We'll talk some more college basketball later on this hour as well, right here on 580 Sports Talk. I need to share something really quickly. We'll get to our What Is Wrong With You stories in a moment. We'll find our weekly winner here. Denzel Valentine is probably my least favorite basketball player of all time. Like, I didn't really care in college. He was obviously a great player, co-national player of the year with Buddy Hield. One of them won the Wooden, one won the other one. What is the other one? The Naismith.
The Naismith, yeah.
I don't remember who won which. He was drafted by the Bulls, 14th overall. The Bulls make me mad all the time. Like, I'm constantly in a state of rage at the Chicago Bulls. I have never disliked a professional athlete, I think, on my own favorite team more than Denzel Valentine. That guy sucked so hard. He was awful. And I just saw a video of him playing in the G League, and I'm mad all over again. He should not even be in anything NBA affiliated ever again. I can't believe I wasted a whole commercial break when I could have hydrated or taken a deep breath or done some brief meditation or anything. I wasted it on that guy. Okay, I'm done. Thank you for letting me vent. Let's get to What Is Wrong With You. Two stories today. Our current winner for the week, the car wash getaway. This is going to be very hard to beat. Two folks were going to rob a grocery store, a Giant Eagle, while one, teammate A, was robbing the store. Teammate B decided, I got to shine my ride up. And he got in line at the car wash and then got trapped at the car wash. And by the time, well, even before they got done with the car wash, the police had showed up to apprehend them. Why would you go get a car wash at that time? There's absolutely no need for that. Completely superfluous. All right, my story for today, I will go first. We're going down to Pinellas County, Florida, the town of Pasco, or Pasco County, man, I should say. Dan, we've had a lot of stories over time of guys or gals who are in prison, they get out, and then they immediately have to go back to jail because they committed another crime.
Yeah.
How about committing a crime before you even leave the building when you get bonded out?
That's new.
We meet 33-year-old Richard Rodriguez of Holiday in Pasco County, Florida, who attempted to purchase his $1,700 bail bond from the Pinellas County Jail when authorities noticed that the card he was using to buy the bail bond didn't belong to him. The credit card, along with several others that did not belong to Rodriguez, were found among his personal items at the jail. Arrest documents state Rodriguez elected to remain silent regarding the credit card numbers. He was thusly charged with credit card fraud. Bail was again set at $5,000. Court documents indicate drugs or alcohol may have influenced his decision.
So what was he in there for at first?
Don't know. That is not made clear to us.
It would be very funny if it were also credit card fraud.
That would be very funny, actually.
He got him busted for credit card fraud. They booked him in. He says, I'll buy a bail bond. I said, okay, how will you be paying for that? Credit card. Let's keep a close eye on this transaction.
Why would you think that would work? Again, just what is going through your mind that you thought you could use stolen property to get out of jail? If that had worked, he probably would have felt like, greatest criminal of all time. Like, oh man, I just committed a crime to get out of committing that previous crime. I'm a genius. Doesn't really work like that.
No, not at all.
What do you have for today?
So we're going to Raleigh, North Carolina, and the Volkswagen dealership, Leith Volkswagen of Raleigh, who is apologizing to customers who received oil change reminder stickers that displayed a racial slur. The slur was added to the stickers after business hours by a teenager who was accompanying a parent who worked for a third-party cleaning service. The teen was allegedly found to have adjusted the text on the stickers via the dealership's sticker printing machine. The incident took place on the evening of February 24th, but was not discovered until customer pickups the following day. The manipulated stickers in question read, "We thank you for your business," followed by a racial slur. Employees, unfortunately, did not notice it until a number of stickers had been affixed to customer vehicles following service appointments.
I can't. I mean, I don't really blame them. Why would you be reading the print on the sticker? I don't necessarily blame them for that.
How was it that it was so easy that a teenager farting around while his mom or dad was cleaning the joint was able to look around and say, hey, it'd be really funny if I put the N-word on these oil change stickers. That was, by the way, the slur, if in case you didn't put two and two together.
I was a little curious which one it would be. I'm not really surprised it's that one.
It's not a lot of them in like the general lexicon these days.
No, you've got to be filled with a lot of hate to use certain ones.
Any racial slur.
Well, yes. Okay, that's more importantly true.
Yes.
But yes, there's ones that are more, well, I don't, never mind. They're all bad. I'm just going to leave it at that. They're all bad.
More archaic?
Yeah, more archaic.
Yeah.
There you go. That's a good word for it. I was wading into some dangerous waters there.
No. I understood what you meant.
Who's our winner for today? These are good. We've had a great week of stories.
For a short week? Yeah, we sure have. I'll go with the guy committing a crime before he could even get out of jail. That's pretty funny.
That is really funny.
It's really funny. I don't know that it's funnier than my guy.
Nah, man, that one wins. That one wins. I just can't.
He's the getaway driver. You got one job to make sure you make a getaway. He heard his partner say, hey, man, you got to make sure we get a clean getaway. He said, bet.
Oh, my God.
That's what we call it, the not-so-clean getaway.
The not-so-clean. Yeah, I'm going to adjust that right now in our notes. The not-so-clean getaway. That is our winner in What Is Wrong With You for the week. That's an incredible story. It really is. Get it after you skip town. Get it somewhere else. Or just don't bother. Wait for it to rain. Unbelievable. That's an all-time dumb move. That's a friendship ender right there. Literally no longer ride or dies.
You know the story's good when you're laughing about it as much on the Friday as you were when the day it was introduced. And that's where we find ourselves with this particular story. It's got some real potential.
It almost gets dumber every single time I hear it. It is incredible. That's a phenomenal winner. It is our weekly winner for this first week of March in What Is Wrong With You. Let's get to a commercial break. We'll talk some more Big 12 basketball, Big 12 tournament, and more from the college hoops world after this on 580 Sports Talk. So fresh and so clean. 4:44 on 580 Sports Talk. It's a Friday afternoon.
I didn't expect you to start singing along. That startled me a little bit.
What a great song.
It is.
I love Outkast.
Me too.
The Braves are doing an Outkast bobblehead giveaway this year. Did you see this?
Yes, I did. I have to find a way to get that bobblehead.
Yeah. Oh my God. It's going to be $400 on eBay after that game.
Easily.
It is among the best bobbleheads I've ever seen, though. It's Big Boy and Andre in a low rider. Oh, it's so good.
Really, really good.
I haven't seen
of finance bros from Cobb County and Buckhead bringing that home. They don't know elevators. They don't know Spotty Dopalicious.
I saw Outkast perform in 2015 there in Chicago at the Lollapalooza Festival, and I got to go see them. And they played all the hits through the first 2/3. I mean, they've got tons of hits, but through the first 2/3 of the concert, they played all things that everybody knew. And then the last third, since it was their farewell tour, they played a bunch of deep cuts, played a bunch of, album hits that were some of their personal favorites. And the crowd, by the end of it, thought, what are these? I don't really know what these are. It was actually very funny to witness. Speaking of bobbleheads, by the way, the Royals are giving away bobbleheads the first 2 games of the season. You can get a Bobby Witt Jr. one on opening day, the 30th of March. April 1st, you can get an MJ Melendez build your own bobblehead. You can move his arms and change them to be doing different things.
Interesting.
It's a very unique bobblehead.
I've not heard of that before. That's pretty cool.
Good for you, Royals. Yeah, I haven't seen their promotions until right now. A lot of them, they don't seem to have really figured out at this point. But yeah, a couple bobbleheads to start off the year. How about that? Very cool. College basketball this weekend. As I mentioned earlier, K-State has a chance to finish 2nd, 3rd, or 4th in the Big 12 standings and thus seeding for the Big 12 tournament. The way it'll work, if K-State wins, they're the number 2 seed. No doubt about it, if they win against West Virginia. If Baylor and Texas both lose, that also guarantees K-State gets the number 2 seed in the Big 12 tournament. They own the tiebreaker over both programs. That's pretty cool. K-State ends up the 3 seed if they lose and either Baylor or Texas wins. It has to be exactly one of them. So that's how K-State could end up 3rd, or if K-State loses and both Baylor and Texas win, K-State would end up 4th. I think they're going to get the 2 seed because I think they're beating West Virginia. I think that's the most likely outcome. Texas has KU, obviously not easy, and Baylor's got Iowa State. I think Baylor is winning this weekend. Iowa State is in the dumpster, and it's at home. It's in Waco.
Yeah, so it's already road Iowa State,
which is not great.
No.
Here is the one question. Does Caleb Grill leaving, does that become a galvanizing effect for Iowa State? Either that we're going to play for our guy or, damn, we hated this dude. Now we're feeling good. Does it galvanize them in that way, or are they beyond the pale at this point?
I think their larger problem, beyond whatever's been going on with Caleb Grill the last couple of months, their larger problem is they just don't have enough good players. And I think they look worn out on the court. I think they look fatigued. Like last year, and we've hypothesized this, right? Like the way that TJ Otzelberger's teams play, like they're scrambling all over the court, high tempo, high energy. Mm-hmm. You wonder if maybe that wears the team out by the time you get to February and March. I think that's a fair and open question. And the rejoinder to that is, well, Iowa State still made a run to the Sweet 16 last year, which is true. Mm-hmm. But you know what they had last year? They had Isaiah Brockington and Tyrese Hunter. They don't have anybody that good on this team.
No, they really don't. Kalsher can be if he's hot, but you trust that? You trust Gabe Kalsher to suddenly turn it on? I don't know that I do. I shouldn't say it like that. That makes it sound like he's some bum. He's a good player, but I don't know if you can rely on that one dude to carry you that
I don't
far.
think he's putting you on his back the way that Brockington could.
No, man, Brockington was a monster. He was a good-ass player.
Yeah, really good player.
That was a little raunchy. I apologize. Other games from around the Big 12 this weekend. TCU at Oklahoma. If TCU doesn't win that game, it probably doesn't really mean anything for them, but God, they better win that game. Oklahoma's done. They looked like they just gave up at the end of that K-State game the other day. And that's not to take away from K-State's win. But Oklahoma just looks like it's over.
They look demoralized.
Yeah.
Again, the senior day factor, maybe that's a powerful one for some of their vets, Sherfield, Groves. But yeah, that should be a game TCU uses as a stepping stone, tries to get hot. Like TCU, again, like their ceiling so very high.
Mm-hmm.
Can they get Miles and can they get the big fella healthy is going to be the big question.
I didn't get to hear it yesterday as I was setting up for.
I almost called him Eddie. I almost called him Eddie Kendrick. That's a temptation. Eddie Lampkin.
Were you listening to the Temptations?
Not recently, but I'm always excited to hear the Temptations.
Kendrick. That's very funny.
Eddie Kendrick, one of the Temps.
Did you and CJ come to blows yesterday?
No, it was very civil.
Okay.
Because my question essentially was CJ Moore thinks they're dangerous in March.
Uh-huh.
And I said, I'm just really concerned about Miles's health and Lampkin's health and their shooting. And that's where we came to a consensus. Like if TCU gets ousted early in the NCAA tournament, it'll probably be because they had a terrible shooting game. Like they just don't shoot it very well, but they're so good in transition that they can score enough that it doesn't matter if they're getting out and they're running.
Yeah,
and
I think that's
Oklahoma's going to give them a lot of chances, I think, to get out and run.
Probably.
Because Oklahoma's sloppy with the ball, and Oklahoma misses a lot of shots, and that's where TCU can really take advantage. Like TCU doesn't have to play a half-court game against Oklahoma.
No, they really don't. They should sweep or mop the floor with them. Oklahoma State at Texas Tech. Oklahoma State need that win, or do you think they're in solidly?
I think they need Oklahoma State.
Mm-hmm.
They need the win, man. They are.
I agree.
They are in next 4 out territory in the latest Joe Lunardi bracketology. They need a dub.
Man, they were playing so well at one. What were they, 7-3 in Big 12 play?
I think so. They had gotten hot. They'd won, I think, 4 in a row.
5 in a row.
4 or 5 in a row. Yeah, and then Avery Anderson got hurt. And, Anderson's not a guy that puts up those, like, eye-popping numbers, but I think we've seen just how important he was to their whole operation.
The funny thing about that game in particular, really the non-Kansas Big 12 games, state of Kansas Big 12 games this weekend, if Oklahoma State beats Texas Tech and Iowa State loses to Baylor, Iowa State will fall all the way to the opening night of the Big 12 tournament.
Yeah.
They would be the 7th seed. They got swept by Oklahoma State this year. So OSU would move into a first-round bye, and Iowa State would have to play the first night. What a fall from grace.
Yeah.
That is a disaster. Any other games around the country that you are keeping an eye on this weekend?
It's the final weekend of the regular season for most of the big conferences, and for some, it will be a championship weekend. I think Arch Madness concludes on Sunday.
I believe you were correct about that.
I think there are some other conference championship games that'll go off on Sunday as well.
Yeah, I believe you're correct about that.
Big South Championship, Patriot League Championship, Missouri Valley Conference are all the championship games are all on Sunday. So that's exciting. Look forward to that on Sunday. Michigan, Indiana's pretty important one. Michigan's they might be completely off the bubble. It might be too late, but they're in desperation mode going to Bloomington on Sunday. Illinois, Purdue is kind of a prove it situation for Illinois. Houston goes to Memphis, chance to solidify number 1 overall seed.
That's why I'm looking at that one. If Memphis can beat Houston, KU is going to the Midwest region of the NCAA tournament. I'm pretty darn confident in that. I think Alabama's going to be your number 1 overall this year.
Lunardi's got him in the Midwest now.
He does.
And I think this is the first time.
Yeah, he moved him in this week. Andy Katz has them in there as well. I've seen a few other places.
He actually has them above Houston. Right now, Lunardi's got Alabama as the number 1 overall seed.
Yeah, and I think Alabama's going to stay there. Even if they don't win the SEC tournament, I think they're going to stay there. I think KU right now has the better resume than Houston overall anyway, but any Houston loss between now and the NCAA tournament helps KU. More, honestly, than I think any KU win helps its own cause.
Yeah.
KU's got 15 quad 1 wins. And if it beats Texas this week, they don't need to even win anything in the Big 12 tournament. They're going to be just fine. Houston, though, with that schedule, like Memphis is fine. They're not awful. They're not great. They're just fine. Houston loses that game. That's a bad loss relative to the status they've built up for themselves, at least in my opinion. That helps KU big time in terms of overall seeding. So I normally would never cheer for Memphis, but I'm cheering for Memphis in that game this weekend.
Houston won by 17 last night against Wichita State, but Wichita State shot 65% in that game.
They did. That game also, I don't think, because I watched some highlights of it. I didn't watch the full game itself. Wichita State was in it for a good portion of the second half, not the entire game, and the final score was obviously lopsided.
Without their leading scorer, Jaquan Walton didn't play.
Yeah.
But they were in. That was a competitive game until the last, 5-6 minutes, and Houston really pulled away, home court, senior night, the whole deal. But, Wichita State, they did. They kept it close. Also interesting to note that the spread was 16.5 on that game.
Interesting.
Houston
they know,
won,
man.
Houston won by 17. Yeah,
they always freaking know.
Vegas always knows.
Speaking of Memphis, did you know, I looked this up today, this has nothing to do with sports, that is the closest Bojangles to Topeka?
Did not know that.
Yeah, I was legitimately tempted to make a trip.
Another reason to love the city of Memphis. One of my favorite American cities.
Yeah, or I take that back. Memphis is the nearest Cookout. The nearest Bojangles is in Mount Vernon, Illinois, where I've actually been before. It's in far south Illinois.
What the hell's a Bojangles doing in Illinois?
I don't know. I truthfully do not know. But it's on I-70 in southern Illinois.
It's right on I-70, huh?
Right on I-70. I've been at a hotel at probably the same exit before.
So it's a straight line to some Bowberry biscuits is what you're telling me.
Dude, I freaking love Bojangles. Whatever it takes to get one in the greater Topeka metro area, I will make sure it happens.
Franchise a Bojangles.
That is my promise to you, Topeka. We've got to get to a commercial break here at the top of the hour for the national and local news. We'll come back. We've got some 580 Sports Talk headlines brought to you by Blue Dot to lead off the 5 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk. of 580 Sports Talk coming your way. Brendan Dworzinski, Dan Lucero here with you, rounding out your work week and our week of shows here on 580 WIBW. Thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you so much for joining us throughout the week. Want to give a shout out here as we start off the hour to the great state of North Carolina. Had a listener chime in on the Big O Tires text line. So we were talking about Bojangles right before we got to the top of the hour news break. North Carolinians, they know. Yeah, Bojangles all over down there.
Yeah, they do. That's the first time I went to a Bojangles was near Charlotte.
The Charlotte airport has a Bojangles, which is really the only good part of the Charlotte airport. It is seemingly always under construction and always has delayed flights, but they've got a Bojangles, so it's all worth it. It is absolutely wonderful. So shout out, what was the area code we had?
980.
The 980. Shout out to the 980 to North Carolina.
That is Charlotte.
There we go. Charlotte's a nice city. I've been to Charlotte a little bit.
Yeah, I went there for the NMSA Awards and
nice.
And Banquet National Media Sports Association, SMA, I guess it is, National Sports Media Association. Yeah. Went out there for the awards and Banquet. Gosh, it would have been 2015. Would have been summer 2015. And a cool thing that happened when I was there is the NBA Finals were on television, and I was sitting at a table watching the NBA Finals with Bob Ryan and Frank Isola.
That's pretty cool.
That is a very cool thing to have done. I didn't do a lot of talking. I just did a lot of listening.
You probably learned more about basketball in watching one game than you did like your entire life up to that point.
Well, Bob Ryan's the Pope.
Yeah,
right. When it, when it comes to that kind of stuff. So like, I forget who, I think Ann Killian might've been at that table from the San Francisco Chronicle, but like everybody's asking Bob questions about the NBA.
Yeah.
And Bob is answering from like personal experience, cause he watched all of those guys.
Yeah.
And
seen it all.
Covered the Celtics in the 80s. And so and the 70s and the 60s. So yeah, that was a pretty cool thing that I got to do. So Charlotte will always hold a special place in my heart because I got to watch the NBA Finals with Bob Ryan.
Bob Ryan, one of the last guys who, at least public figures, who is anti-3-pointer. And not just, I want to see a more old school game, but he is genuinely against the 3-point line being on the court. I've always found that very fascinating. I've seen him talk about it on Around the Horn or his tweets about it on Twitter. Sounded like a guy who's 95 years old there for a second.
He's got some wild tweets.
Yeah, he does.
One time he went off on people who like Twix. It was very strange.
I like Twix.
I like Twix too. I felt a little personally offended.
What was his beef with Twix?
I don't know. I don't remember exactly, but he did. He had a vendetta against people who like Twix.
Very, very
Bob
odd.
Ryan, anti-3-pointer, anti-Twix. Also,
Otherwise,
Bill Raftery was there that weekend.
Oh, man. I love Bill Raftery.
You'll be stunned to know that by the time I was ready for bed, Bill Raftery was still holding down the hotel bar.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I've shared this story countless times before on the show, but with March rolling around to think of it again. It was also, I think, the last time Louisville hosted a regional. But I was there 2016, student broadcaster for KU. Buddies and I are there calling games, and we get up. It's after the Sweet 16 game. And KU had just beaten Maryland, and we're packing our stuff up, and Raph is taking pictures with all these groups of fans, like, oh, we're from Kansas City, we're from Washington D.C., wherever. I mean, they're all taking pictures with Raph right behind us. So we turn around, and all of us, 21 years old, really wanting to get into the business and all that, like, hey, Mr. Raftery, nice to meet you, and he's super jovial and just lights up the whole room. And we were obviously in a huge room. We were at the Yum Center in Louisville. And he, asked our names and said hi and asked what we were doing. And we said, yeah, we're, student radio with KU. And he goes, oh, that's so cool. You guys get to do this. That's awesome. That's great. And then he points to Ian Eagle, who he was doing the games with at the time. And he says, like, you guys already, all three of you already have more talent than my partner, Ian Eagle, over there. Like, Ian Eagle is incredible.
Yeah, Ian Eagle's one of the absolute best to ever do this.
And he's taking a phone call over at the TV seats, and Raph is just ripping on him. Oh, my God, it was funny. So that's my one Bill Raftery story, and he was great. So I went over. I wanted to introduce myself to Ian Eagle.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, I mean, shoot, I might as well go say hi. And he was on the phone with a producer or someone from CBS, I guess, and he's effing this and effing that up a storm on the phone. And I thought,
boy,
you know what? maybe if KU wins on Saturday, I will talk to you.
Yeah.
Not right now, though. But I did meet PJ Carlissimo. That was cool.
Sure.
He was doing radio. He even did the courtesy of looking at my credential to see what my name was. And he's like, Brendan, nice to meet you. Wow, thanks, PJ. I have my name on my shirt, essentially, but thanks. Appreciate that. That's like the two most famous people I've ever met. I have not met many famous people in my life. Them and like Michael Wilhoit.
Yeah, that was that weekend was like, yes, there were lots of luminaries from the print media, from the broadcast media. That was a pretty cool weekend that I got to take part in. I got to take advantage of that because I wasn't employed at the time. I was between jobs. I've been laid off from one, and I was like a month away, it turned out, from accepting another. But I got to go out to Charlotte and meet and interact with a bunch of. Sat down and talked to Gene Deckerhoff, longtime voice of Florida State football and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Does he still do both?
No, I think he actually hung it up. I think he retired. Yeah.
He was doing them both for a long time.
Yes.
That's quite a schedule to get from Tampa to Tallahassee.
It's not a lot of guys who do both.
Yeah.
A college schedule and an NFL schedule anymore. Bill Hillgrove does. I think he still does the Steelers and Pitt football, which at least that's in the same city. It makes a certain amount of sense.
Cincinnati. Does Cincinnati have a radio guy who does the Bengals and the Bearcats? I might be thinking of Pittsburgh, one of those Rust Belt cities, but I feel like Cincinnati is the same case. But maybe I'm off base on that.
You might be right. Dan Horde. He does the Bengals and he does all of UC stuff, football and men's basketball.
Man, that's pretty good last couple of years for him.
Hey, when they join the conference, let's talk to Dan Horde.
Yeah, we will. Put that down. We'll have to talk to him next year. Yeah, KU plays him next year. I don't think K-State does, but KU does. Last week of the season, in fact, they play Cincinnati.
Fun story about Dan Horde. His former broadcast partner with the Syracuse Chiefs went on to be a writer for The Simpsons.
Really?
So the broadcaster's name in the Dance and Homer episode is Dan Horde.
Huh.
It's a really early Simpsons episode. Dance and Homer. That's Dance and Homer season 1 or 2.
Wow. How about that? Simpsons expert here. Knew that. Did you know that off the top of your head, or do you have
that's on his Wikipedia page.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
that's very cool. Anyway, that all comes from our listener in Charlotte. So thank you for listening in the 980.
Can you tell it's a slow headlines day, folks?
Yeah, not a whole lot going on into the weekend. We do have a couple of headlines to get to here at our 580 Sports Talk headlines. They are, as always, brought to you by Blue Dot of Kansas. You can visit them online at bluedotkansas.com. It's a very Friday. We got a high school hoops coming up tonight. We're both going to be out at some games. We got some high school hoops tomorrow as well. Obviously, big college basketball weekend, too. One thing, let's get to the Gonzaga bit from the Big 12, Pac-12 merger poaching story from earlier today. So we led off the show talking about this report from Stuart Mandel and Max Olson of The Athletic that the Big 12 is pretty much ready for the opportunity to grab the Arizona schools, Utah and Colorado from the Pac-12. We expect to know, according to, I believe it's Ross Dellinger. Yes, Ross Dellinger of Sports Illustrated tweeted a little bit earlier this afternoon. We are expected to know some money numbers for the Pac-12 media contract within the next couple weeks, within the next few days, possibly, which means this will come into more focus sooner rather than later. And if the per school payout of the next Pac-12 contract does not meet the needs or the desires of the four corner schools, the Big 12 is ready to accept them with open arms into the Big 12, probably without or with equal revenue sharing, because we've had some movement over time where some schools did not get an equal cut of the revenue. Maryland and Rutgers, I think 3 years they had to take a lower cut before they got a full payout from the Big 10. I would assume they would get a full payout right away. The Big 12 has a rule in its contract that, hey, we can have a pro rata increase in our overall contract. So new additions, if they're from another Power 5 league, would get paid an equal amount. I assume that would come into play here. So we led off the show talking about that, but there was another note in that piece from The Athletic about expansion and the Big 12 trying to be aggressive, put together this great brand of competitive football from coast to coast, and also being the best basketball league. And they mentioned this. Yormark, being Brett Yormark, the commissioner of the Big 12, is also deep in discussions with Gonzaga but sources involved in the process indicated he wants clarity on the Pac-12 situation before making that move. So one, that report from a few weeks ago that the Big 12 was interested in Gonzaga, that is extremely real. That is a very, very real thing. And there are obviously pros and pitfalls that would possibly come with adding Gonzaga to the Big 12. The other side of that, though, I'm not sure if the way this is worded indicates they're interested in Gonzaga regardless, or they're interested in Gonzaga regardless. They just want to wait to see who else is going to join before making that official or going deeper into that. Or are we interested in Gonzaga only if we can't also add Arizona, Arizona State, Colorado, Utah? I'm not sure what this writing would indicate. I think you can read it either way.
Yeah, because if you do get those 4 teams and then you start adding others, it gets a little unwieldy, doesn't it?
Right. Because if you go above 16,
you get unwieldy. But I think that's probably what the future is going to look like anyway, potentially.
Possibly.
Depending on what happens with the ACC. Like, you might end up with 18, 20 team conferences.
Is it so out of reality, out of the scope of reality, that we could end up with just 3 mega conferences at this point? You get the Big Ten, you get the SEC, and you get the Continental Athletic Conference, whatever the Big 12 turns into. If it you can't, the Big Ten's not going to change its name. There's too much brand association with that. But like, if you have 20 teams in the Big 12, can you really be the Big 12 anymore? I think you have to change your name at that point.
Well, it was the Big 12 with 10 teams for a long time.
Well,
we just got used to it.
I suppose that's true as well. So that might be possible at some point. I would think that it's more so the interest is it's like recruiting. Like, hey, we're really interested in this number 65 overall 4-star point guard. We're really interested, but we're also looking at the number 25 overall 5-star point guard. And if he decides to go elsewhere, then you're in. But if he comes, sorry, we're out of space. That's kind of what this feels like to me. Because there's no reason why you can't have a lot of great teams. But if you want to talk about strengthening basketball, do you need to add Gonzaga and Arizona? Or are you cool with just having one of them to add to your already strong league? I would imagine that comes into play too.
Yeah, the Gonzaga thing is so fascinating because we just haven't seen, there are associate members of conferences in all kinds of other sports.
Uh-huh.
Did you know that the University of Arkansas Little Rock competes, I think, in the Pac-12 in wrestling? Or is it the Big Ten?
Yes, I know they're in some other league. I want to say it's a Pacific Coast League. North Dakota State is technically in the Big 12. They're a Big 12 wrestling team.
Yeah.
Which is very funny.
Yeah, I'm looking it up here, Little Rock, because they're, an Ohio Valley Conference. But yeah, they're in the Pac-12 in wrestling.
That's very funny.
We see this stuff all the time. This is not new in the Olympic sports, in the non-revenue sports. We have schools that are just affiliate members of one league. We've never seen it in football or basketball.
I think
so. It would take some getting used to, but there's precedent for a school deciding, hey, we've got a program that doesn't really fit in the league that we're in all of these other sports. Let's take it to a league where it does.
I think the closest example would be Hawaii, because they're in the Mountain West in football, but they're in the Big West and everything else.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
So I think that's your closest example. But, I mean,
we haven't seen it at the Power 5 level.
No, that's not quite apples to oranges, but it is red apples to green apples.
Because the Big West isn't a football conference.
Exactly. That's just such a unique situation.
At least it's not a division. It's not a 1A football conference.
Right. In fact, I don't know if any of those teams in that league have football.
No, I think they do.
Do they?
Yeah, Cal Poly's got football.
Yeah, I guess they do.
UC Davis.
Okay, you're right. My bad.
Yeah.
My mistake. But I don't know. I worry you fly a little bit too close to the sun if you add 4 new teams to get to 16 and then say, you know what, we're also going to add a basketball-only member that's already a powerhouse in Gonzaga. I just worry that you get a little bit too close to late-stage original Big East, where you had so many members at one point.
Mm-hmm.
You had your football teams, but then you also had Marquette and you had DePaul and you had Villanova and all these basketball-only schools, or FCS football and Division I basketball. I just would worry that maybe you're flying a little bit too close to that if you bring in Gonzaga as well as those Pac-12 schools.
It gets closer to the point where a lot of people have speculated we might get anyway with football particularly, but maybe we get there with basketball where it's just kind of its own thing and conferences and leagues start to form around like which schools have a certain stature in the game. Like, is it foreseeable that there's a future of like major college football where, yeah, the SEC schools are playing, but we don't want to play Vanderbilt every year. Like Vanderbilt, we'll play in other stuff.
Yeah.
It makes sense for us playing other stuff, but we're tired of kicking you in the head 60-7 every year. Why don't you and Duke and Rutgers and some of those other schools, why don't you go play in your own sandbox for football? And maybe basketball is a sport where instead of having those kinds of examples, maybe you have some of the more prominent mid-major programs joining some of the more prominent Power 5 or Power 6 leagues.
Yeah, I think there is something to that.
Because like what would have made more sense for Creighton? Like joining the Big East with all its sports or staying in the Missouri Valley, and if they had the opportunity to say, oh, you're just going to join us for just basketball.
No, I think there's certainly something to that. The Olympic sports, the quote unquote non-revenue sports, I don't think it makes sense for them to travel a ton. It just doesn't financially make a whole lot of sense. So if you're talking, football, okay, you do the football conferences as they're clearly being morphed into now. Basketball, okay, you're getting a similar kind of thing. But baseball, for example, exactly to your point, Creighton is a perfect example of this because they're such a geographic outlier. What makes more sense for Creighton baseball? They play in the Big East, and they travel to the East Coast all the time.
Play in places with worse weather.
Yeah, right? Or they play Kansas State, and Nebraska, and Missouri State, and go south if you want, go Oklahoma into that too. Wichita State. Like, that's a great regional league where you end up with pretty equal-ish competition. Baseball in the Midwest and on the plains is not exactly baseball in the deep South, right? Like those SEC programs, it's different down there. Those Texas programs, it's different down there. And not that I think, well, we're not that good, so we should never play them. But I think just regional Olympic sport conferences make so much more sense, especially when you have all these affiliate members all over the place. Just play as close by as you can.
Our guy Vance on the YouTube comments, and we welcome your YouTube comments and your texts on the Big O Tires text line, asks, Gonzaga only has 7,000 students. What would the Big 12 want with them? They don't care about the student body population. They care about the basketball program. They want the eyeballs. They want the stature and the status that adding another excellent basketball program, a school that is invested heavily in basketball success, what that would mean for the basketball stature of the Big 12 conference.
Yeah, I think
hey, it's that West Coast time slot. 10 p.m. on ESPN, on ESPN2 on Big Monday. You get Gonzaga hosting Texas Tech.
Yeah, you could do that triple up Big Monday.
Yeah,
that'd be pretty wild, actually. I think to the academic card, I think that's becoming less and less valuable at this point because a lot of the best public schools in the country are already in the Big 10 or the SEC. Like, they're being swallowed up. And I think the Big 12 at this point is just going to say, look, we are a college athletics conference. This is not college and then athletes after that. No, but this is about the sports more than it's about the anything else. The Big 10, for example, is in a position where it can play the high and mighty, well, we are an academic league first and then athletics. Like, this is still 1897. They can still play that card and it works for them. The Big 10 or the Big 12 at this point is essentially in a position where, hey, we're just trying to get the best sports possible and we'll figure out the rest after that. Any headlines for you today?
Yeah, let's get to this from the College Football Rules Committee. They have recommended 3 rule changes for the coming season as they are looking to try and shorten games. Now, look, I love a good college football game, but if you've tried to watch one on a broadcast window, they're starting to get a little long. So,
especially a CBS game.
Yeah. Ugh. Well, and some of that has to do with just commercial breaks. Like, the commercial breaks are simply too long. But there are 3 rule changes that have been recommended by the College Football Rules Committee. Number 1, no back-to-back timeouts. You would no longer be allowed. I think this is an NFL rule where you can't call a timeout right after you've called another one.
Correct.
It's been an NFL rule for a long time. Joe Gibbs infamously lost a game doing that because he tried to call back-to-back timeouts, and it was a penalty, and it moved, I think it was Buffalo, closer to kick a game-winning field goal in a regular season game. The fact that we're talking about Joe Gibbs tells you kind of when this happened. This was like 15 years ago, but a long time ago. Anyhow, no back-to-back timeouts. No untimed downs at the end of the first and third quarters. You'd still have the untimed downs at the end of games. You wouldn't have them at the end of quarters.
I think that makes sense for what it's worth.
Makes a lot of sense. I don't understand why that rule is in place in the first place. And the third rule, running clock after first downs. This would cut out about 10 plays per game per estimates. The oversight committee will vote April 20th. I'm good with all those rule changes if they come to college football. I'm totally fine with the end of the stopped clock after first downs.
Except inside 2 minutes, I believe, is part of that proposed rule.
I think you might be right.
I think Brett McMurphy put that on Twitter. I'm okay with that. You know who does that timing? Running clock at all times and then stopped clock on first downs inside 2 minutes?
It's the XFL, isn't it?
The XFL does it.
It is the XFL.
The quality of play, low. Quality of rules, high in the XFL. Always has been. No, I'm fine with this. At first, I was a little resistant to it, but I think that probably all makes sense to speed up the game a little bit. I like keeping the different rules between college football and the pros. I don't necessarily think it should be the exact replica one of the other. I like the uniqueness of it. Maybe that's just me. I'm fine with keeping, though, just the stopped clock, and it's just a momentary stoppage inside of 2 minutes. I think that is a fair compromise for the two. I really didn't remember, and I don't think this is the case in the NFL, that you have the time or the untimed down at the end of quarters. I thought it was just the end of half and end of game. I think in the NFL, that's how it works.
Yes.
You can't end the quarters, first and third, with a penalty. It just moves on to the next one because you're keeping the ball. You're not resetting the game, essentially. That is the rule, I think, that should be more homogenous. It really doesn't make sense otherwise. Like, you get to keep the ball. The situation remains the same. You just flip ends of the field. So, no, I think that one makes sense. I'm in favor of all these.
Well, we have a texter at the 785 from the Big O Tires text line who points out K-State would love that new rule, the running clock after first down.
Yeah, they probably would.
Yeah, they would. Teams that can run the ball, that can pound the rock down your throat and finish a game that way, yeah, they'd be all in favor of that rule.
Makes the 4-minute drill a whole lot easier for those teams.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And I guess the argument is, you don't want to go too far in making college football just like the NFL. But I do think that the stop clock after first downs, especially in the modern college game, I do think we could do well to restrict it inside of 2 minutes.
One final headline for me from the college basketball world. Antoine Davis of Detroit Mercy, who at one point, if you remember, was widely or openly considering a transfer to K-State this offseason.
Yeah, it sounded like it was going to happen, and then he ended up with an NIL deal with Glow Balls.
Glow Balls.
They glow. The ball that glows.
A Chinese glowing basketball company. He returned to Detroit Mercy, where he plays for his dad. His career for now is over, and he ended up, I believe it's 4 points short. 3 points short of Pistol Pete Maravich's all-time college basketball scoring record. Now, there is a chance that could be revived, and he could break the record. Detroit Mercy, did not qualify for the NCAA tournament. They were not very good this year.
14-19, something like that?
Yeah. They are not going to qualify for the NIT, but there are 2 paid tournaments that you can be a part of, the CIT and the CBI. West Virginia played, I believe it was in the CIT a few years ago because they had a super young team. They played well at the end of the year, and Bob Huggins said, yeah, we can use more. I'm sure we'll pay the $50,000 and be a part of it.
Right.
That's what it costs. You have to get invited to it, but they'll take pretty much anyone, and you just have to be able to fork over the money. The CBI has already been tweeting about how long it takes to get from Detroit to Daytona Beach, where they play this.
Yeah.
I think that's going to happen. That's better press than the CBI has ever gotten before.
Yeah, it'll be a reason for people to check out the CBI for the 5 minutes it will take Antoine Davis to score 4 points.
They will give him the ball. I mean, that's been their entire season. It's just get Antoine the ball and let him shoot and let him try to break this record. So it feels a little shady, but we're going to get plenty of really annoying debate about well, the real record belongs to Pete Maravich.
Yeah, that's why if I were Antoine Davis, if I were Detroit Mercy's coach, who also happens to be Antoine Davis's dad, Mike Davis, and yes, that's the same Mike Davis who once led Indiana to the national championship game. I didn't realize he was still in the game. I didn't realize he was still coaching.
He's had some wild coaching opportunities. He was at Texas Southern
to
for a while.
UAB to Texas Southern and now at Detroit Mercy. Antoine Davis, great player. He's had a great career. He got the COVID year and the 3-point shot and scored 3 fewer points than Pete Maravich did in 3 years with no 3-pointer. Like Pete Maravich, even if Antoine Davis plays on and breaks this record, the greatest scorer in college basketball history is still Pete Maravich. He averaged 44 points a game. What even is that without a 3-pointer?
The only argument against that, he took 38 shots a game, which is a lot. That is a lot of shots to take in a game. That was also kind of what LSU was doing. But again, you get 2 more years and no 3-point line. I think that is a bigger deal than the number of shots you take.
2 other fun things that Antoine Davis and Pete Maravich have in common. Both played for their dads.
That's true.
And neither ever played an NCAA tournament game.
That's crazy. That is really crazy.
Yeah, it makes you wonder about Press Maravich as a head coach, right? You couldn't get to the dance
with that guy.
Maybe it's something in the water at LSU because Dale Brown had Chris Jackson and Shaquille O'Neal and the other big guy, Stanley Foster.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't get past the Sweet 16 with those guys.
That's crazy. By the way, this is from Rob Anderson.
Stanley Roberts. Sorry, not Stanley Foster.
This is from Rob Anderson, who's the Creighton basketball SID, who put this on Twitter this morning. Can we put Pistol Pete Maravich's NCAA scoring record in perspective? Sure, Rob, go ahead. He scored 3,667 points in 83 games over 3 years. If you took the top 83 single game scoring performances since the 2021 season, you would still have 202 fewer points than Pete Maravich had. That's insane. That is really, really crazy. Any other headlines for you?
Nope. I think that will tap it out there.
Then we will take a commercial break. I am out of here. I'm on my way to the pressure cooker to get set up for some high school hoops tonight. Shawnee Heights girls versus Highland Park with a trip to the 5A girls state tournament on the line. Dan's got you the rest of the way before he heads to the House of Blues tonight for some Washburn rural basketball. We've got more 580 Sports Talk, though, coming up right after this.
5:36 on this edition of 580 Sports Talk. Dan Lucero taking you the rest of the way. Brendan Dworzinski, as he said, on his way to call some high school hoops tonight. We've got not quite a doubleheader, but we've got like bonus coverage for you tonight of 580 Preps High School basketball. Highland Park and Shawnee Heights, our featured game, 5A girls sub-state final. One team from the capital city is going to go to Emporia for the 5A girls state tournament next weekend. It'll be either the number 3 seed Highland Park or the number 6 seed Shawnee Heights. And Brendan and the coach Larry Latimer will be there, and we'll have the call of that one. And the tip-off is set for 7 o'clock. They kind of yanked the tip-off time around a little bit. First it was 7, then it was 6. This morning, back to 7 again. So 7 o'clock tip, 6:45 pregame right here on 580 WIBW and FM 104.9. At the same time, I'll be posted up high atop the court at Washburn Rural High School, where a 6A boys sub-state final will be taking place. Washburn Rural taking on Derby, and I will be providing pertinent updates. If we've got a blowout at the pressure cooker, we might go to Washburn Rural for some play-by-play. If one game ends before the other, we'll get some play-by-play of the finish of the second one. So that's what we've got planned for you tonight, and hopefully, we will at least be bringing you good tidings for one city school in the Highland Park Shawnee Heights game. But hopefully we can bring you some good tidings from the House of Blues as well. So stick with us tonight for 580 Preps high school basketball coverage as state tournament berths are handed out. 5A girls tonight and 6A boys. Also 4A boys tonight, so Hayden's in action. Hayden boys are in action, and I forget where. So I'm going to look that up here, if you will bear with me for just a second. But I believe it is the 4A boys tonight. And as I double-check that, I can confirm that it is indeed Hayden at Atchison tonight. Hayden, the 9 seed, Atchison, the number 1 seed in 4A East boys. So Hayden boys in action tonight, trying to punch their ticket to Salina. Then tomorrow, you've got 4A girls, which is Hayden as the, I clicked on the wrong one. Clicked on 4A West, not 4A East. Hayden girls are the 7 seed in the 4A East. They play 2 seed Fort Scott on the road tomorrow night at 5 p.m. 5A boys sub-state finals will be tomorrow. That's Highland Park, the number 1 seed in the East, taking on 9 seed St. James Academy at 6 p.m. We're going to have play-by-play coverage of that one here on 580 WIBW. Immediately following Kansas State men's basketball, we'll have Highland Park and St. James Academy. Yours truly on the call of that one. Shawnee Heights is also in action. Shawnee Heights boys tomorrow night in Pittsburgh. Shawnee Heights 5 seed, Pitt the 4 seed in the East on the boys side. Also 5A boys West bracket action tomorrow. Topeka West, the way they bifurcate Class 5A, sends Topeka West to the west half of the state. They are the 7th seed. They travel to 2 seed Hutchinson tomorrow for a sub-state final, 5 p.m. tip-off against the number 2 seed Hutch. And then 6A girls is tomorrow, and there is a city versus city showdown set to take place at the Dungeon with a 6 p.m. tip-off. Topeka High taking on Washburn Rural. Topeka High is the 4 seed. Washburn Rural is the 5 seed in that one. So at least one city team is headed to Wichita for the Class 6A state tournament. That's the city action for you. As far as county action goes, you heard it last night here on 580 WIBW. Silver Lake and Rossville's girls are on a collision course with each other in their 3A sub-state. They both won last night. Silver Lake over Mauer Hill Mount Academy, 63-28. Rossville smothered Jeff West, 60-32. So it's number 1 seed Silver Lake, the number 3 seed Rossville tomorrow night at 5:30 p.m. or in the girls sub-state final for 3A. The boys sub-state semifinals in that sub-state out at Perry-Lecompton High School are tonight. Rossville has already been eliminated. Silver Lake's still alive after they upset the 3-seed Mauer Hill Mount Academy on Tuesday. They take on 2-seed Perry-Lecompton tonight. The other half of that sub-state is Bishop Ward and Olathe Heritage Christian. So that is a look at what is happening, a little prep sports chat for you. Also, we mentioned and want to mention again and give a congratulations to Washburn Rural Boys Bowling, state champions in Class 6A today. And the way that they did it, my understanding is they went out and they rolled in the Baker half of the tournament a 980 as a team, which, according to friend of the program, Brent Maycock, is believed to be one of, if not the best Baker series in the history of state bowling in Kansas. So phenomenal stuff from the Washburn Rural boys. They finished with a pin total of 3,711. It's 135 ahead of Olathe Northwest for the state championship. Congratulations to them as they bring home the state title. We're going to take a quick break here on 580 Sports Talk. We'll come back, a little bit of Royals talk about how they did today. Spoiler alert, they're a wagon. They can't stop winning in Cactus League play. We'll talk a little bit about that, set the table for the rest of your sports weekend. That is coming up after this break here on 580 Sports Talk. Brendan sang earlier today, I could sing this one if I really wanted to. Queens of Stone Age, my favorite band. 5:45 here on 580 Sports Talk. We're rounding out the week. Appreciate you being here with us, hanging out, whether you're listening on 580, FM 1049, online, 580WIBW.com. Checking us out on the YouTube stream. Hi to those watching on YouTube. Big O Tires text line still open for the final 15 minutes as well. 785-272-9910. 9429. Got a text from the 785 that'll dovetail nicely into what I wanted to talk about first this segment. Said it yesterday, Bears repeating, the Royals are using up their allotment of 2023 season wins in Cactus League action. Look, I understand why it feels that way, because the Royals, they simply cannot stop winning these meaningless baseball games. They are now 7-1 down in Arizona after a 6-4 victory over the Oakland Athletics this afternoon. Brad Keller got the start, acquitted himself nicely. 3 innings, a run on 2 hits, 3 strikeouts, 1 walk. Scott Barlow gave up a run on 3 hits in his inning of work. Dylan Coleman, a run on 2 hits and a walk in his inning of work with a strikeout. Richard Lovelady, scoreless frame, 1 hit, 1 strikeout. At the plate, Hunter Dozier had a double and an RBI and a run scored in 3 trips. Franmil Reyes had another hit as he bids to make the team. Samad Taylor, 2 hits. Jose Briseño, 2 hits. If you know those names, that's a sign you're a real diehard. Bobby Witt Jr. DH'd. He's playing a lot early this spring, you might have noticed, and the reason for that is he's going to go off and represent Team USA in the World Baseball Classic, which starts in 4 days. I don't know if people get excited about that the way I do. I get really excited about it. I wish it could be a bigger deal. I wish it could be the truest possible test of which nation had the best baseball talent. If you had everybody's best pitchers lined up to be full go, like if Japan had Yu Darvish and Shohei Ohtani lined up for like 7-inning starts at a time, or if Team USA could really roll their very best out there. And it just can't be that. That's not the nature of the World Baseball Classic. But man, imagine if it were. Wouldn't it be awesome? And it's not, and I understand that it's not. And that's just the way it goes sometimes. But I am still excited to watch it, even in its current iteration. We'll be checking out the World Baseball Classic when it starts on March 7th. So that's why you notice probably that other than Bobby Witt Jr., not a lot of other Royals regulars played today. A lot of them did yesterday, so not many of them did today. Whether or not Dozier is a regular, I guess, depends on your definition. If he's a regular, I think that's probably bad for the Royals. I don't think he should be playing every day, but they owe him a lot of money. But like not guys who are like nailed on opening day starters. Of those guys, the only guy who started was Bobby Witt Jr. And even he was DHing today. He didn't play in the field. They're just trying to get him at bats and have him ready so that he can either be ready to go if he plays a lot for Team USA, which I don't know that he's going to. I think Trey Turner will probably be the choice shortstop for Team USA. But so if he doesn't play, then he's not at a huge at-bat deficit when he comes back. Whenever Team USA is done in the World Baseball Classic, that's your thought process there. Still got to wait another few days for that, though. Unfortunately, the World Baseball Classic does not start until March 7th, which means we don't have any of it this weekend. We do have plenty of other sports to keep an eye on this weekend. Mentioned we're going to see the first bids for the NCAA tournament handed out this weekend. We've got, I believe it's 3 conferences who wrap up their tournaments on Sunday. The Missouri Valley Conference is one. If you followed that for a while, Arch Madness is always one of the first conference tournaments that wraps up. So you'll have Arch Madness's championship. You'll also have the Big South Conference wrapping up the Hercules Tires Big South Championship, which to tie that in with, if you've been listening all day, this will tie in nicely. They actually play the Big South Championship at the Bojangles Coliseum in Charlotte. Did not know that. The other championship game, I think I said incorrectly earlier, it was the Colonial. It's the Atlantic Sun who has their championship game on Sunday. And that one is already set. That'll pit Liberty against Kennesaw State. Kennesaw State has never been to the NCAA tournament, so they're trying to be a first-time dancer, if you will. Both of those teams went 15-3 in the Atlantic Sun. So that ought to be a really good game, actually. That's a 2 p.m. tip-off on ESPN2 if you're looking for something to do on Sunday. Also this weekend, NASCAR's in Vegas, I believe. Pennzoil 400 in Vegas on Sunday. PGA Tour's got the Arnold Palmer Invitational going down. I think that's a pretty cool event. Not everybody loves Bay Hill as a course. I think it's pretty cool, personally. Right now, your leader, Kurt Kitayama, 9 under through the first 2 days. That's a 2-shot lead over Jordan Spieth, 3 up over Xander Schauffele and Corey Connors. Tough day for John Rahm today. Followed a 65 with a 76 and dropped all the way to 3 under par, 6 shots off the pace. Golf is hard. What can I say? Among those who missed the cut include Colin Morikawa, who'd actually been playing really well. He missed the cut. Cut line was 2 over par. Colin Morikawa did not make the weekend. Justin Rose did not make the weekend. Unfortunately, Gary Woodland did not make the weekend. He went 75-74 for a 2-day total of 5 over par. Fan favorite Joel Damon from Netflix's Full Swing series also did not make the weekend, 9 over par for the 2 days. But otherwise, it's a pretty strong group at the top of the leaderboard if you're looking to watch some good competitive golf this weekend at the Arnold Palmer Invitational. So, yeah, just a few of the things going on. Tonight, you're looking for something to do tonight after prep sports, something I will be doing tonight after I get home from high school basketball coverage. 9 p.m. ESPN. 2 best teams in the Western Conference in the NBA matching up. Denver Nuggets hosting the Memphis Grizzlies. That'll be a fun one. Grizzlies blew out the Nuggets last week in Memphis, so Denver will be looking for a measure of revenge and trying to stay atop the Western Conference. That'd be a great way to kick off your sports weekend. Why not? What are you doing on this sports weekend? Let us know in the YouTube comments or the Big O Tires text line. In the meantime, we're going to take one final break and come back with a final word for your weekend here on 580 Sports Talk. Wanted to draw this to everybody's attention before I got to my final word. The great Bob Kendrick from the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum is going to be in Topeka tomorrow. He's going to be at the Shawnee County Library from noon to 1, giving us talk about the history of the Negro Leagues. There is a Negro League art exhibit, I believe, on display right now at the Topeka and Shawnee County Public Library, and Bob Kendrick's going to be there tomorrow. And if you've never seen Bob Kendrick speak in person, you should do that. I've had the pleasure. I'm going to probably go tomorrow if I'm able to make that work in my schedule, and I should be. So I'm kind of looking forward to that. So just a heads up, if you're in the broadcast area and you can make it to Topeka tomorrow at noon to hear Bob Kendrick tell some Negro League stories, why not do that? Anyway, final word for me today. KU and K-State are in interesting spots in this final weekend of Big 12 play. For KU, it is as meaningless as a game gets the rest of the way. There's nothing tangible that is up for grabs. A lot of teams you would think might have a letdown in a situation like that. Bill Self teams, Kansas teams, mentally tough teams typically don't experience letdowns. If KU does get got by Texas, I don't think it will be because they're looking ahead. I think it will be because Texas plays well, which they're certainly capable of doing. Texas is capable of winning that game. I don't think if KU doesn't win, it will be because they get caught looking. K-State is in an interesting position as well. They are playing a desperate West Virginia team, really needs a win to solidify a bid in the NCAA tournament. How does Kansas State come out? Can they put together 40 good minutes of basketball? Because if they do that, they should be able to beat West Virginia no matter how desperate the Mountaineers may be. Enjoy your weekend. Be safe out there, whatever it is that you choose to do these coming weekend days. And we'll be back with you on Monday to recap the sports weekend. For Brendan Dorzinski, I'm Dan Lucero. This has been 580 Sports Talk.